Chapter 318. The first prefect was forced to agree to Chu Kuangren's terms. When the other sages saw this, they looked at each other in fear. Even a great sage had submitted to him. This Chu Kuangren was just too terrifying. Besides the first city, there's also the Sky Emperor Palace. Chu Kuangren looked at Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang and said. Hearing his words, Heavenly King Sage Zhang gritted his teeth. All right. There was nothing he could do. If the other party were to really go to the Sky Emperor Palace to wreak havoc, even if all the sages of the Sky Emperor Palace were to make a move, they would not be a match for him. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel a wave of sorrow in his heart. All of them had underestimated Chu Kuangren. Who would have thought that Chu Kuangren's combat strength would be so terrifying that even the combined forces of 6 sages could not suppress him? Even the great sage had appeared, but he still had to admit defeat. When the cultivators in the first city saw this, they could not help but feel their hearts racing as they stared at the white-robed figure in the sky. After causing a ruckus, he was able to escape unscathed. He had even forced the first city and the Sky Emperor Palace to publicly apologize. How many people in the world could achieve such a magnificent feat? Unique in this world, unique in this world. Tian Jizi shook his head and sighed. Then, he looked into the distance and murmured, the unknown lands must be having a headache now that such a person has appeared. Looking at the time, it's about time for them to send people into the world. High in the sky. Chu Kuangren had single-handedly forced the Sky Emperor Palace and the first city to back down. He then put away his guqin and sword case. His spiritual sense swept across the first city and soon found Lan Yu, Nangong Huang and the others. He turned into a stream of light and appeared in front of everyone. Sect leader, are you all right? Everyone hurried forward to welcome them. What could possibly happen to me? Chu Kuangren chuckled. Sect leader, you don't have to do this for us. Nangong Huang still wanted to say something. Chu Kuangren immediately slapped him on the head and interrupted him. Don't waste your breath. I'm not only doing this for you guys, I'm doing this for the entire Black Heaven sect as well as myself. If I don't vent my anger, I won't feel comfortable. Hearing this, the others looked at each other in dismay. They knew that Chu Kuangren was just saying that to let them not take it to heart, but how could they not take it to heart when it was something like this? They were moved to the bottom of their hearts and secretly swore to pledge their lives to the Black Heaven sect. They were willing to go through fire and water for Chu Kuangren without any regrets. The championship had ended, but Chu Kuangren and the others did not leave. They lived in the Four Seas restaurant. The next day, a notice appeared in the first city's central plaza. On it was written that the Sky Emperor Palace and the first city had secretly colluded against the Black Heaven sect. There were also the seals of both major forces on it. The Sky Emperor Palace and the first city had publicly apologized. Countless people surrounded the central square. Looking at the notice, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. 2 top-notch sage orthodoxies had never publicly apologized to another orthodoxy like today. No, let alone these 2 top-notch sage orthodoxies, even the other sage orthodoxies had not done something like this. This could be said to be the first time. TSK, this time, the Sky Emperor Palace and the first city's reputation can be said to have hit rock bottom. How shameless. I can't believe there was such a shameful inside story in this championship. What's even more shocking is that the Black Heaven sect still managed to clinch the championship despite being targeted like this. Yeah, this is unbelievable. No wonder Chu Kuangren fought with so many sages and even destroyed a few islands. So it was because of this matter. One notice caused an uproar in the city. Everyone on the streets was talking about this matter. The news of the 2 orthodoxies cheating in the championship and being forced to publicly apologize also spread like wildfire. Soon, every orthodoxy in the firmament star had received the news. However, compared to that, what they were more concerned about was, Chu Kuangren could suppress a great sage. At that moment, Chu Kuangren's name struck fear in all the orthodoxies. Even the sages behind him did not want to provoke him anymore. Vaguely, Chu Kuangren already had the aura of invincibility. The Four Seas restaurant was crowded with people. That was because two people had suddenly arrived at this place. They were the First City's 13th prefect and the Sky Emperor Palace's palace lord. No matter where they were well-known figures. However, at that moment, both of them were standing in front of a young man. They did not dare to show the slightest bit of disrespect. The young man was dressed in a white, wide-sleeved robe. He had an otherworldly appearance and an extraordinary aura, which dazzled many female cultivators at the scene. Sect leader Chu, this is the First City's apology. Please accept it. The 13th prefect took out a yin and yang ring and said. They were here to apologize for cheating in the championship. Beside him, the Sky Emperor Palace Lord also took out a yin and yang ring and handed it over. Although he was reluctant, he could not do anything about it. Chu Kuangren's strength was there for all to see. Who would dare to be unconvinced? Chu Kuangren took the two yin and yang rings and said, the people you should apologize to are not me, but the people who participated in the championship. The Sky Emperor Palace Lord and the 13th prefect looked at each other. They took a deep breath and looked at Nangong Huang and the others. They then walked up to them and bowed. This youth tournament has caused you to suffer unfair treatment. I would like to express my apologies and seek your forgiveness. The same goes for me. I'm truly sorry. Nangong Huang and the others had never encountered such a thing before. An honorable supreme, the leader of an orthodoxy, bowed and apologized to them? No one would believe such a thing even if they told others. It was too shocking. Alright, this matter shall end here. Go back and tell your sage that I'll be visiting the Sky Emperor Palace in a few days. Chu Kuangren said to the Sky Emperor Palace Lord. Upon hearing that, the Sky Emperor Palace Lord was scared out of his wits. Sect leader Chu, are you trying to kill us all? What do you mean by kill us all? Chu Kuangren was stunned too. He was only going to visit them. Why was he trying to kill them all? Then why did you come to the Sky Emperor Palace? Why? Are you trying to go back on your word? You promised to open up all cultivation techniques to me. Are you going to move here if I don't go? Chu Kuangren said calmly. Upon hearing that, the Sky Emperor Palace Lord finally understood. So that was what it was about. He could not be blamed for overthinking things. After all, none of the orthodoxies that Chu Kuangren visited ended up well. The Murong clan and the Shang clan were still fresh in his mind. Moreover, the Sky Emperor Palace still dared to offend Chu Kuangren. Now that he said he was going to visit them, who could stand it? Although the Sky Emperor Palace Lord was reluctant to open up all cultivation techniques, it was still acceptable compared to letting Chu Kuangren wreak havoc in the Sky Emperor Palace and wreak havoc in the place. I'll tell the sage about it, the Sky Emperor Palace Lord said. Alright then. Let's leave it at that. Lan Yu, send them off. Chu Kuangren said. After sending them off, Lan Yu returned and asked, Master, when do you plan to go to the Sky Emperor Palace? In 2 days. I remember that the Sky Emperor Palace is not far from the First City. I'll go there first before returning to the Black Heaven sect. 2 days later, Chu Kuangren took out the elusive mirage and left the First City for the Sky Emperor Palace. Looking at the elusive mirage from afar, the prefects of the First City heaved a sigh of relief. They had finally sent that lunatic away. Chapter 319. Sky Emperor Palace. It was the top sage orthodoxy in the White Tiger domain. Its status was similar to that of the Overlord Sage tribe in the Black Warrior domain. Basically, no one dared to provoke them. However, today, every cultivator in the Sky Emperor Palace looked solemn. Even the Sky Emperor Palace Lord looked like he was facing a formidable enemy. That was because someone was coming to the Sky Emperor Palace today. He's here. The Sky Emperor Palace Lord looked into the distance. Amidst the sea of clouds, a huge black fairy boat soared into the sky like an ancient beast, giving off an immense pressure. When they thought about the person on the ferry boat, the Sky Emperor Palace Lord and the others looked at the elusive mirage, feeling even more pressured. Not long after, two figures came down from the elusive mirage. It was a man and a woman. It was Chu Kuangren and Lan Yu. The crowd could not help but exclaim at the sight of them. They were probably the top two young people in the world. Needless to say, not even a great sage could do anything to Chu Kuangren. Lan Yu, on the other hand, was extraordinary as well. She had defeated the strongest young Emperor Chang Tian in the Sky Pride Championship, so her strength was well known. Sect leader Chu, you're here. The Sky Emperor Palace Lord went up to them and greeted them politely. Chu Kuangren nodded. Is the Sky Emperor Palace's cultivation technique ready? Sect leader Chu, are you going to see it now? Yes, I'll head back once I'm done. I don't think the Sky Emperor Palace has any intention to entertain me. Chu Kuangren smiled. What kind of joke was that? The people of the Sky Emperor Palace could not wait for him to leave. All right then. Please follow me, sect leader Chu. The Sky Emperor Palace Lord brought Chu Kuangren to a pavilion, which was where all the Sky Emperor Palace's cultivation techniques were kept. Lan Yu, return to the elusive mirage first. I'll be out soon. Yes, master. The Sky Emperor Palace Lord's mouth twitched. Soon? What does that mean? Are you looking down on the Sky Emperor Palace's cultivation techniques? Do you think you can learn all of them in one go? I've long heard that Chu Kuangren is an arrogant person, and it seems like I'm right. Humph, the Sky Emperor Palace has more than 1,000 cultivation techniques, and they're all top-notch in the firmament star. To think that they're coming out so quickly. You're making a joke out of the Sky Emperor Palace's cultivation techniques. The Sky Emperor Palace is really unlucky to have provoked this person. As the few elders watched Chu Kuangren walk into the pavilion, they could not help but mutter to themselves. Of course, it was only in their minds. They did not dare to say it out loud in front of Chu Kuangren. Just as Chu Kuangren entered the pavilion, 3 sages were gathered in the depths of the Sky Emperor Palace. Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang was among them. Rumor has it that when this person was at the Dharma sect, he was able to comprehend 8,000 techniques in half a day. His enlightenment has reached an unimaginable level. Comprehending all 8,000 techniques in half a day. Since he said that he would come out soon, I guess he really has the confidence to comprehend all the cultivation techniques in the Sky Emperor Palace in a short period of time. Sigh, this young man's talent is too extraordinary. Don't forget, there is still a scroll inside. At this moment, Heavenly King Sage Zhang said indifferently. Hearing this, the eyes of the other 2 sages lit up. The scroll that we've labeled as taboo is also inside? Not bad. Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang nodded slightly. That scroll is too strange. Anyone who tries to comprehend it will either die of mental exhaustion or suffer from qi deviation. Even though I tried to comprehend it with the cultivation of a sage, I nearly succumbed to it. I believe that no matter how high Chu Kuangren's enlightenment is, he will still be at a disadvantage in front of that scroll. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Chu Kuangren had caused the Sky Emperor Palace to suffer such a huge setback. Not only did he have to apologize and compensate them, he even owed them billions of soul stones. How could he let Chu Kuangren take away the Sky Emperor Palace's cultivation techniques without a hitch? Sage Zhang, aren't you afraid that Chu Kuangren won't be affected by the scroll and will come after you instead? One of the sages said with a frown. Chu Kuangren's combat strength was too terrifying. They did not want to fight him anymore as it would not benefit them at all. Don't you worry. Although I've placed that scroll inside, I've also marked out its danger and warned people not to comprehend it. But who do you think Chu Kuangren is? He's one of the best sky prides in the world. All sky prides are prideful. How could he not be interested in that scroll? The more we mark out its danger, the more curious he will be. Hence, he will definitely try to comprehend it. However, if something goes wrong, he can only blame himself for not listening to our advice. What does it have to do with our Sky Emperor Palace? Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang said confidently. The other two sages looked at each other and laughed out loud. That's right. It'll be best if he goes berserk. If he's lucky enough to escape, we can't be blamed. That makes sense. The three sages were ready to watch a good show. At that moment, inside the pavilion, Chu Kuangren was reading through the various cultivation techniques of the Sky Emperor Palace. Activating his meditational clarity attribute, he quickly comprehended all the cultivation techniques and integrated them into his transcendent coalescence Daoist physique. Under such circumstances, his transcendent coalescence Daoist physique was constantly improving and evolving. The transcendent coalescence Daoist physique was a very terrifying Daoist physique. Its unique characteristic was that the more cultivation techniques the possessor knew, the more terrifying the power of the transcendent coalescence Daoist physique would be. With this characteristic, even the chaos physique, the heavenly divine imperial physique, which was ranked first and second, could not compare to it. However, there was a limit to a person's energy. No matter how high one's level of understanding was, how many techniques could one comprehend in one lifetime? That was why the transcendent coalescence Daoist physique was ranked third. However, it was different in Chu Kuangren's hands. With the help of his meditational clarity attribute, the speed at which he learned the cultivation techniques was so terrifying that it was unparalleled in history. The transcendent coalescence Daoist physique could be used to its fullest potential. In the future, it could even surpass the chaos physique and the heavenly golden imperial physique. Mystical techniques, supreme techniques, sage techniques, Chu Kuangren comprehended the Sky Emperor Palace's cultivation techniques one by one. Soon, he arrived at the top floor. The place was empty except for a wooden box. There was even a seal on it that said, "Forbidden magic, do not comprehend it." Chu Kuangren was stunned. He stepped forward and easily tore off the seal. Are you kidding me? This forbidden technique doesn't have any restrictions at all, and all it takes is 2 pieces of paper? You're obviously trying to trick me. Chu Kuangren curled his lips, but after some thought, he still opened the wooden box. Now that you mention it, I'm really interested. Inside the wooden box was a scroll. When Chu Kuangren opened the scroll, he saw black runes engraved on it. A strange energy seeped out from it and attacked Chu Kuangren's mind. The countless runes in front of him were like little tadpoles swimming around, so he could not see what was written on it at all. Child's play. Chu Kuangren chuckled and calmed his mind. With the rock-steady Daoist core, he quickly resisted that strange energy. Then, he began to comprehend the scroll. A mysterious Daoist rhyme surged into his mind. Even with the help of his meditational clarity attribute, Chu Kuangren still felt a little difficult. A cultivation technique that even the meditational clarity attribute feels a little difficult. Interesting. No wonder the Sky Emperor Palace listed it as a forbidden technique. Chapter 320. The Sky Emperor Palace's forbidden scroll piqued Chu Kuangren's interest. He sat down with his legs crossed and began to gain insights. This scroll was extraordinary, and the Daoist rhymes it contained were so profound that one could not help but be immersed in it. Choosing a cultivation technique did not mean that the more profound it was, the better. There had to be a limit to it. If one were to choose a cultivation technique that was too profound and could not be understood by oneself, then one might not be able to achieve anything in one's lifetime. The Sky Emperor Palace's forbidden scroll was such a cultivation technique. This cultivation technique was more profound than any that Chu Kuangren had ever seen before. If other cultivators tried to gain insights from it, they would not be able to succeed. Besides, this scroll also contained a demonic aura. Anyone who tried to gain insights from this cultivation technique would be easily attracted by its mysteries and become immersed in it. Cultivators with a slightly weaker Daoist core, even honorable supremes, might die from mental exhaustion. Sky Emperor Palace. The three sages were all watching Chu Kuangren. They could not help but be delighted when they saw that he had begun to gain insights from the forbidden scroll. He's fallen for it. Let's see what he's going to do now. Oh Chu Kuangren, you've already written that it's a forbidden scroll, yet you still want to gain insights from it. You're doomed today because of your own arrogance. Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang laughed out loud. He could not wait to see Chu Kuangren suffer a setback and be unable to do anything to him. Time passed, and soon, an hour had passed. Chu Kuangren was still on the top floor, trying to gain insights from the scroll. The three sages were sure that he was already immersed in it. Even an honorable supreme would die from mental exhaustion after 3 days of studying this scroll. Even if Chu Kuangren is as powerful as a sage, he can only last 10 days at most. If he doesn't break free from the mysteries of the scroll within 10 days, he will die from mental exhaustion. Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang smiled. 4 hours passed. Chu Kuangren still did not move. 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours passed. Just as Chu Kuangren was trying to gain insights from the Sky Emperor Palace's forbidden scroll, a huge wave suddenly surged above the firmament star's ocean. A huge island appeared out of thin air above the ocean. A beam of colorful light suddenly shot into the sky and reached the clouds. An extremely vast Daoist rhyme spread out from this colorful light. All of a sudden, all the sages in the entire firmament star felt it. This Daoist rhyme actually contains the Emperor's aura. It's from overseas. An island that has never been seen before. Moreover, it even contains the pressure of an emperor. Could it be that this island is the residence of an emperor? According to the records, there are only a few emperors living overseas. White-robed emperor, willow emperor, or blue sky emperor. There must be great opportunities on this island. Send someone to investigate immediately. The appearance of the nameless island in the sea shook the entire firmament star. Streaks of light streaked across the sea. Among them, the 36 oceanic islands were the first to receive the news. They sent people to seal off the island in an attempt to monopolize the treasures on the island. As a result, they had many disputes with the sage orthodoxies of the 4 regions. Within the Sky Emperor Palace, Heavenly King Sage Zhang and the others naturally knew that the nameless island had appeared out of thin air and was suspected to be the former residence of an emperor. At this moment, they also planned to rush forward to take a look. After all, opportunities related to emperors were something that even sages would be extremely tempted by. What should we do about Chu Kuangren then? One of the Sky Emperor Palace's sages suddenly asked. Leave one person here to look after him. Who should stay then? The 3 sages looked at each other. No one wanted to miss out on an opportunity that might be related to an emperor. How about rock paper scissors? One of the sages said. The other 2 sages rolled their eyes. Using rock paper scissors to decide such an important matter? Are you out of your mind? Just when the 3 of them were hesitating, a terrifying surge of Daoist rhyme that contained some kind of emperor's aura swept out from the Sky Emperor Palace. What's going on? This aura, it's Chu Kuangren. The 3 sages' expressions changed, and their figures instantly disappeared. When they arrived above the pavilion, they looked at Chu Kuangren, who was sitting cross-legged in shock. This surge of Daoist rhyme is the same as the one on that scroll. Don't tell me he really managed to gain insight into the technique on that scroll? That's impossible. Chu Kuangren slowly opened his eyes. He stood up, raised his fair arm, and slowly pointed a finger at the void. A black finger chi pierced through the air. The finger chi transformed into a giant finger that pointed at the sea of clouds. In an instant, the void rumbled, and the sea of clouds shattered. From that finger, the three sages felt an inexplicable sense of fear, which shocked them to their core. After all, that finger chi was not targeted at them. If they were targeted, how terrifying would that be? The three of them did not dare to imagine. I can't believe he really managed to gain insight into the technique on that scroll. There's a surge of Emperor's aura within it. It's an Emperor technique. By the heavens, how did he do it? Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang had a complicated look in his eyes. That scroll had been in the Sky Emperor Palace for a very long time, but no one had ever managed to gain any insight from it. A lot of cultivators had died because of that scroll. Even Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang himself almost fell for it. Yet now, a cultivator who was not from the Sky Emperor Palace had managed to gain insight into the technique on that scroll. That made him feel extremely frustrated. It was as if that scroll was originally prepared for Chu Kuangren, and they were merely keeping it safe on his behalf. They did not even have to pay for its safekeeping. Not only that, but they had also lost many cultivators' lives. Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang's expression kept changing. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He felt as if a mountain was pressing down on his chest, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Sage Zhang. Quick, calm your Daoist core. Don't overthink it. The two sages beside him quickly said as their expressions changed. Naturally, they knew what Sage Zhang was thinking. Even they had the urge to vomit blood, let alone Sage Zhang. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have put that scroll in there. Chu Kuangren would have gotten an Emperor technique for nothing. Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang's face was pale as he gritted his teeth and said. He was so angry. Initially, he wanted to trick Chu Kuangren, but he did not expect that he would end up with such a great opportunity of fortune for Chu Kuangren. The other two sages looked at each other and smiled bitterly. You can't be blamed for this. Who knew that he could really gain insight into that technique? This kid can't be measured with common sense. Indeed. Inside the pavilion, Chu Kuangren looked at the scroll in his hand and smiled. The heart-piercing finger is a good Emperor technique. Moreover, this Emperor technique is only 1/9 of a cultivation technique. There are 8 other copies of the same scroll, and each of them contains an Emperor technique. Only when all 9 Emperor techniques are combined will this mysterious technique reveal its true form. Chu Kuangren murmured. That was the information he obtained after gaining insight into the heart-piercing finger. The Emperor technique was already the most powerful technique in the history of the firmament star. It was hard to imagine what level the 9 great Emperor techniques would be when they were combined. Could it be related to those illusory immortals? Chu Kuangren secretly made a mental note of that as he planned to keep an eye on the whereabouts of the other scrolls. Chapter 321. When Chu Kuangren walked out of the pavilion, the Sky Emperor Palace Lord, the group of elders, and even the sages looked at him in shock. Obviously, the fact that Chu Kuangren had learned the heart-piercing finger had shocked them, especially the sages. That was an Emperor technique. They had given it away just like that. Sect leader Chu, I wonder how you managed to learn this Emperor technique? One of the sages could not help but ask. He was too curious. How did Chu Kuangren do it when no one from the Sky Emperor Palace had been able to learn the secret of that scroll for so many years? I can learn it if I want to. Chu Kuangren said calmly before he looked at Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang. Without another word, the long sword at his waist was unsheathed, and an extremely cold sword ray was unleashed along with the Emperor's aura. That sword ray was extremely powerful. It was the Emperor technique, heaven-slaying sword-drawing technique. What? Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang's expression suddenly turned into one of extreme horror. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Chu Kuangren would attack just like that. Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang used all his strength to block the attack. However, that terrifying sword ray was extremely fast, and with the help of the Descendant Self-Sword, even Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang was severely injured in an instant. The sudden turn of events made the other two Sky Emperor Palace sages' expressions change as they glared at Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren, what are you doing? D***mn. Chu Kuangren ignored them and immediately used his Sage Ruler technique, Phantom Light Strike, to appear before Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang. With a lift of his arm, a majestic Buddhist light emanated and transformed into a giant golden hand that slammed Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang into the ground. The terrifying energy shook the entire Sky Emperor Palace, and a huge crater was formed on the ground. Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang lay in the crater, vomiting blood continuously. What? What are you doing? Chu Kuangren's body emanated a terrifying sword Dao aura as he said, I'm sure you know how strange that scroll is. Do you really think I don't know what you're up to? I've already written that it's a forbidden technique. Heh, with just those 2 pieces of paper? Chu Kuangren chuckled. Do you think that just by writing 2 pieces of paper, you can shirk all responsibility for your scheme against me? First, you bribed the first city to go against the Black Heaven sect, and now you're playing these petty tricks in front of me. It's not easy to cultivate to become a sage, but you've been courting death time and again. Even the heavenly Tao can't save you now. At that, Chu Kuangren swung the Descendant Self-Sword in his hand once again, and an extremely violent sword qi instantly engulfed Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang. The sage's body was instantly torn apart by the sword qi. Heavenly King Sage Zhang was dead. Chu Kuangren. How dare you? Damn it! The expressions of the other 2 Sky Emperor Palace sages changed drastically. They roared angrily and joined forces to attack with a punch and a palm. The violent power was actually at the level of a 7-step saint. However, a blood-red flame erupted from Chu Kuangren's body. The 9 deaths blazing blood art, which was considered a taboo by countless cultivators, had been activated. He slashed out with his sword, and a vast sword light surged out. It actually shattered the palm and fist, and even sent the 2 saints flying back 1,000 feet. The 2 sages stared at Chu Kuangren in shock. They were both 7-step sages, and yet they were repelled by a single sword attack from Chu Kuangren. What kind of horrifying combat strength was that? Chu Kuangren, why did you kill Sage Zhang? One of the sages asked angrily. Let me ask you something first. What would happen if someone else were to study that scroll? Chu Kuangren asked calmly. The 2 sages' expressions changed slightly. They knew very well how evil that scroll was. If it was light, it could lead to qi deviation. If it was heavy, it could lead to death from mental exhaustion. Chu Kuangren chuckled when he saw the 2 sages' expressions. It seems like both of you know very well that he should be killed for plotting against me, not to mention what happened in the competition. He could already kill Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang back when he was in the first city. No. If he were to go all out, it was not impossible for him to kill all the sages who joined in the attack that day. However, other than those sages, there were many other sages from other orthodoxies as well. Moreover, Lan Yu, Nangong Huang, and the others were also in the first city. Hence, he had to restrain himself. However, Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang had plotted against him again today. If he did not kill him now, he would not be Chu Kuangren anymore. But that scroll clearly states that it's a forbidden technique. You were the one who wanted to use it, so how can you blame us for that? One of the sages said angrily. Then you should be thankful that you wrote those 2 pieces of paper. If it weren't for those 2 pieces of paper, you wouldn't be alive now. Chu Kuangren sneered. Those 2 pieces of paper did not have any seals on them at all. It was obvious that they were meant to trick him. The 2 sages were completely dumbfounded. How can there be such an unreasonable person in this world? How can there be such an unscrupulous person? Chu Kuangren, your bloodthirst will not be tolerated by the heavens. One day, karma will strike you, and you'll regret it. One of the sages was so angry that his body was trembling. Upon hearing that, Chu Kuangren chuckled. Karma? Since you're talking about karma, then let me tell you something. Sage Zhang has his own path to death. Him plotting against me is the cause, and me killing him is the effect. How is this karma? Even if there's karma, so what? If the heavens wish to punish me, then I shall defy them. With that, Chu Kuangren turned around and left. The two sages were helpless as they stared at his back. Kill him? They were no match for him at all. Reason? Heavenly Emperor Sage Zhang was in the wrong in the first place. Oh, Sage Zhang, if you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. The person you've offended can't be measured with common sense. Ordinary people's tricks were useless against Chu Kuangren. The Sky Emperor Palace Lord looked at Chu Kuangren with tears streaming down his face. Didn't he say that he was only here to look at the cultivation techniques? Why did he kill another sage? If I knew this would happen, I would rather give all the cultivation techniques to Chu Kuangren than let him come to the Sky Emperor Palace. As expected, wherever Chu Kuangren goes, there will be chaos. Chu Kuangren returned to the elusive mirage. Lan Yu and the others had been waiting there for a long time. Sect leader, Elder Ruyan just sent a message. She wants you to return as soon as possible to discuss the nameless island in the outer seas. Nangong Huang said. Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised. What island? He was so focused on gaining insights into the heart-piercing finger that he did not know that the firmament star was in an uproar because of the nameless island in the outer seas. Nangong Huang briefly explained the incident. Oh, I didn't know something like that happened in the outer seas. Chu Kuangren's interest was piqued. He then rode the elusive mirage back to the Black Heaven sect. Once he returned, Elder Ruyan and the others came to find him. Sect leader, the news of you wreaking havoc in the first city has spread throughout the firmament star. Why can't you have peace wherever you go? Elder Ruyan said helplessly. How can you blame me? They were the ones who started it. Chu Kuangren said innocently. Chu Kuangren's principle had always been that he would not offend others if they did not offend him. If the first city did not go after him, why would he go after them? The sect leader did the right thing. Elder Ruyan, blame the first city and the Sky Emperor Palace for this. One of the elders laughed. Elder Ruyan shook her head. I don't blame you, sect leader. Alright, let's talk about the outer seas first. Chapter 322. Now that the Outer Seas Island has been sealed by the 36 oceanic islands. Other than sages, no one else is allowed to enter. Third forefather, second forefather has gone to investigate, but there's been no news yet. Elder Ruyan briefly told him about the nameless island in the outer seas. Chu Kuangren could not help but feel curious when he heard that. The unnamed island that is suspected to be the residence of an emperor, and the 36 oceanic islands? Interesting, I should go and explore. Since the 36 oceanic islands have sealed it, the rest of you shall stay in the sect. I'll go and see what's going on. Chu Kuangren had made up his mind. The 36 oceanic islands was the collective name of the orthodoxies. Many of the 36 oceanic islands were no weaker than the sage orthodoxies of the four domains. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. Moreover, the 36 oceanic islands were the home of the 36 oceanic islands. With them sealing the unnamed island, it would be difficult for the sage orthodoxies of the four domains to intervene. No matter how arrogant the 36 oceanic islands were, they could not possibly stop all the sages from entering the island. That would be no different from declaring war on the sage orthodoxies of the four domains. By the way, Elder Ruyan, here are some IOUs. If the owner of these IOUs does not pay up within a month, send them a notice. If they still don't pay up, we'll talk about it when I return. Chu Kuangren took out a stack of IOUs and handed it to Elder Ruyan. Elder Ruyan looked at the stack of IOUs in her hand. IOUs? There are so many of them. She looked at the number on the card and her eyes widened, her face full of shock. The Daoist School of Dedication owes us 200 million top-tier soul stones, the Eight-Wind Palace owes us 50 million top-tier soul stones, the Thunder Falcon Tribe owes us 450 million, oh my god. Sect leader, what have you done? Elder Ruyan looked at Chu Kuangren in disbelief. The other elders were also dumbfounded when they saw the numbers on the IOUs. These are the stakes. You can ask Nangong Huang and the others for the details. Alright, I'll take my leave now. Chu Kuangren then left the Black Heaven sect alone. He did not even bring Lan Yu, who had always been by his side. The situation on the unnamed island was still unknown, and most of the people who were heading there were sages. It was not something that an ordinary cultivator could interfere with. If he brought others along, Chu Kuangren was worried that he would not be able to take care of them if anything happened. Overseas, on a nameless island. Because it was sealed off by the 36 oceanic islands, there were countless immortal boats and countless checkpoints within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. All cultivators passing through this area would be stopped and interrogated. For those who insisted on barging in, the cultivators from the 36 oceanic islands would kill them on the spot. They were extremely overbearing. With Chu Kuangren's cultivation level, he was not afraid of being discovered by these outer seas cultivators. He turned into a stream of light and dashed towards the unnamed island. Along the way, he was almost unimpeded. Because no one could catch up to him. The closer Chu Kuangren got, the more he could sense a powerful surge of Daoist rhyme. It was an extremely dense emperor's aura. Very soon. Then, he saw a huge island. The island was shrouded in clouds and mist, making it impossible to see its face clearly. However, some of the scenes that were vaguely revealed were already like a fairyland. Apart from that, the island was also the source of the emperor's aura. This is the nameless island. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. However, just as he was about to approach, an invisible barrier suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking his path. An enchanted boundary? Just as Chu Kuangren was puzzled, a few figures suddenly appeared in front of him. These people all had extraordinary auras. Even the weakest among them was at the honorable level. This area has been sealed by the 36 oceanic islands. All cultivators below the sage level must leave immediately, the leading elder said. He glanced at Chu Kuangren and frowned. Although Chu Kuangren looked extraordinary, he was too young. Forget a sage, he suspected that Chu Kuangren was not even an honorable. How did someone like him enter this place? Were the patrolling teams at the outer perimeter useless? Oh, the 36 oceanic islands. Chu Kuangren activated his eye of revelation and scanned the few people before him. Liao Yun, Ethereal Island Lord, Honorable Supreme, Chu Shan, Thousand Rock Island Cultivator, Honorable Supreme. These people were all the higher-ups of the 36 oceanic islands, and there was even an island lord among them. Especially the leading elder, Liao Yun. As the Ethereal Island Lord, his status was no less than a sect leader of a sage orthodoxy. I am the Black Heaven sect leader, Chu Kuangren. Please make way. Chu Kuangren said. The few people looked at each other when they heard his name. Liao Yun frowned and said, I don't care who you are. If you're not a sage, leave. Chu Kuangren was stunned. No way, there are still people who don't know me? Just how isolated is the 36 oceanic islands? You don't even know me? Chu Kuangren said in surprise. Are you famous? One of the cultivators asked. Chu Kuangren was speechless. He heard that the outer seas cultivators rarely communicated with the four domains. Some of them would only receive news once every few decades. He did not expect that to be true. He had only become famous in the past few years. Everyone in the four domains knew about him, but not many people in the outer seas knew about him. Do I have to force my way in? Chu Kuangren's gaze turned cold as he unconsciously placed his hand on the hilt of his descendant self-sword. At that moment, Liao Yun and the others felt their scalps go numb as a chill surged through their limbs. A great enemy. Liao Yun and the others' expressions became extremely solemn. Just when Chu Kuangren was about to force his way in, a ray of light suddenly appeared not far away. It was an old man dressed in purple robes with a stern expression. Liao Yun and the others' expressions changed when they saw this person. Greetings, Lifeblood Sage. Liao Yun and the others stepped forward and bowed. Compared to Chu Kuangren, this Lifeblood Sage had become famous thousands of years ago. His fame was so great that everyone knew him back then. Yes. Lifeblood Sage nodded slightly. He glanced at Chu Kuangren, and when he saw his face clearly, his expression changed slightly as he quickly went forward to greet him. Greetings, Brother Chu. I'm the Sage of the Jianghu Valley, Lifeblood Sage. Lifeblood Sage smiled. Ah, a fellow Daoist from the Jianghu Valley. Greetings. I didn't expect Brother Chu to come to the outer seas to explore the nameless island so soon after returning from the first city. Why don't we go together? Lifeblood Sage said. He knew that Chu Kuangren was incredibly powerful, so exploring the nameless island with him would definitely be a win-win situation. One could even say that he was trying to ride on Chu Kuangren's coattails. I'd love to, but these outer seas cultivators said that only sages can enter, so they won't let me in. What? How can something like that happen? Lifeblood Sage's expression darkened. He looked at Liao Yun and the others and said, Brother Chu may not be a sage, but his strength is stronger than a sage's. He definitely has the right to enter. Get out of the way. Are you kidding me? How dare you block Chu Kuangren's way? Do you want to live? Chapter 323. Liao Yun and the others were dumbfounded. What kind of ability did this young man have that even a sage had to treat him with such respect? Even other sages would not be this respectful. What kind of existence did they just stop? Sect leader Chu, please forgive us for offending you earlier. Liao Yun and the others were not stupid. Of course, they knew that someone that Lifeblood Sage would treat with such respect was not a simple character. His background might be even more terrifying than an ordinary sage. At times like this, they had to be afraid. Can I go in now? Please. Liao Yun did not dare to stop them. He quickly opened the enchanted boundary and let Chu Kuangren and Lifeblood Sage in. On the unnamed island, Chu Kuangren and Lifeblood Sage had arrived. As soon as they set foot on the island, a vast emperor's aura enveloped them and suppressed their strength. Such a strong emperor's aura. It seems that this place really is the residence of an emperor, Lifeblood Sage said in surprise. Yes. Chu Kuangren nodded. He was glad that he did not bring anyone else with him. With such a strong emperor's aura, anyone below the level of a sage would find it hard to move, let alone explore the unnamed island with him. Chu Kuangren immediately activated his treasure locating skill the moment he stepped onto the island. This divine ability was the most suitable for searching for opportunities of fortune. Chu Kuangren was speechless as he searched. There were indeed many treasures here. Most of them were supreme elixirs that grew on the island, and even the most inferior ones were of the honorable grade. There were even sage-grade medicines that were rarely seen in the outside world. Buzz. At that moment, a strange fluctuation came from not far away. It was the fluctuation of a supreme elixir that contained a strong Daoist rhyme and wood-based energy. Lifeblood Sage was delighted when he sensed the fluctuation. That's great. I didn't expect to encounter such a supreme elixir the moment I arrived. Brother Chu, let's head over quickly, Lifeblood Sage said excitedly. Chu Kuangren pondered for a while before he said, Lifeblood Sage, this is the aura of some supreme elixir. I'm sure many sages have sensed it, and a battle is bound to break out. I don't want to waste my time here. I want to go take a look somewhere else. Lifeblood Sage was dumbfounded. What? Is Chu Kuangren afraid of a battle? He thought for a moment and felt that the other party should have his own plans, so he nodded. Then I'll go take a look myself. He still couldn't resist the temptation of that precious medicine. Judging from its aura, it was very likely to be a saint herb. Origin Sage, be careful. Alright, take care, fellow Daoist Chu. After saying that, the Vital Essence Sage skimmed in the direction of the supreme elixir. Chu Kuangren, on the other hand, dashed in another direction. There was also a stalk of saint medicine there. Moreover, this saint medicine was much more precious than the saint medicine that was giving off a strong aura. The sage-grade herb that the lifeblood sage sensed had just ascended, which was why it was emitting such a strong aura. On the other hand, the one that Chu Kuangren found with his treasure-locating skill had been a sage-grade herb for an unknown period of time. Not only that, but that newly upgraded precious medicine would definitely attract many saints. At that time, it would be hard to avoid a battle. On the other hand, the sage-grade herb that Chu Kuangren had found with his treasure-locating skill had probably not been discovered by anyone yet, so it would not take much effort for him to obtain it. He did not tell Origin Essence Sage about this. After all, Chu Kuangren had the treasure-locating skill, which allowed him to locate all kinds of treasures in no time. If Lifeblood Sage continued to stay by his side, there would inevitably be a division of loot. If it was Chu Kuangren alone, he could monopolize everything. The human heart was always selfish. After all, Chu Kuangren was not a selfless person. Soon, he arrived at a valley. On the mountain wall of this valley, there was a sage-grade herb that was golden in color and had mysterious Daoist rhymes on its leaves. It was a very mysterious sight. Chu Kuangren went to the mountain wall, plucked it, and put it into his yin and yang ring. Easy peasy, a sage-grade herb in my hands. Chu Kuangren smirked. He was in a good mood, so he continued to search with his treasure-locating skill. Information about all kinds of treasures on the unnamed island was fed back into Chu Kuangren's mind. This was especially true in the center of the island, where several kinds of treasures were hidden that could trigger a strong reaction from the treasure-locating skill. 8,000 kilometers south, unknown Emperor-grade item. 8,000 kilometers south, unknown Emperor-grade item. It was Chu Kuangren's first time receiving information about an unknown Emperor-grade item, but he was able to make some guesses. There must be some kind of hidden treasure in the center of the island, which was why the treasure-locating skill could not accurately sense what it was. However, something that could be related to an emperor was definitely extraordinary. Chu Kuangren pondered for a while, but he was not in a hurry to go there. He figured that the other sages would not be able to find out if there was a technique that could isolate the treasure-locating skill from detection. He decided on a route and headed towards the center of the island while collecting other treasures on the island. Many sages were gathered on the unnamed island. Here, the sages were searching for all kinds of opportunities of fortune on the island, and the number of opportunities of fortune there was enough to amaze even the sages. This place must have been a place where an emperor lived. Due to the influence of the emperor's aura, it gave birth to many treasures. Because of one person, a treasure land was formed. Moreover, this was just the exposure of the emperor's aura. One could only imagine how powerful an emperor was. Of course, although there were many treasures, the competition was also extremely fierce. Moreover, it was a battle between sages. The scale of the battle was rarely seen since ancient times. While Chu Kuangren was collecting treasures, he saw sages fighting from time to time. The momentum of the battle was earth-shattering. In the outside world, sages were high and mighty, standing above billions of living beings. It was extremely difficult to even meet one, let alone fight. However, in this place, sages were no different from ordinary people. For the sake of a treasure, there were many people who would fight to the death. Boom! Just as Chu Kuangren arrived at a cliff, he suddenly heard a huge commotion coming from not far away. It shook the entire mountain range. Needless to say, it was the sages fighting again. Chu Kuangren was not interested in these fights. He was still busy collecting the various treasures on the island. However, things did not go according to plan. Just when Chu Kuangren was about to collect the treasures and leave, a palm energy swept past him and hit the mountain wall. With a loud explosion, the mountain wall was instantly shattered. Chu Kuangren was unharmed, but the sage-grade supreme elixir that he was about to collect was destroyed by that palm attack. Although he already had a pile of sage-grade supreme elixirs in his yin and yang ring, he did not care about this sage-grade supreme elixir at all. However, it was something that he had his eyes on. Now that it was destroyed, he could not take it lying down. Chu Kuangren spread his spiritual thought. Let me see which B** destroyed my supreme elixir. Soon, his spiritual thought arrived at the place where the sages were fighting. Although his spiritual thought was destroyed by the powerful shockwaves of the battle as soon as it got close, he could still see the faces of the two people. He was quite familiar with one of them. It's the school of White Lotus's sage. Looks like I can't just ignore this. Chu Kuangren murmured as his figure turned into a stream of light and dashed away. Chapter 324. The School of White Lotus and the Black Heaven sect were allies. Before Chu Kuangren had fully matured, an honorable supreme from the School of White Lotus had offered to protect him. Back in the first city, the School of White Lotus's sage had even publicly expressed her willingness to help Chu Kuangren fight against a few other sages. Now that the School of White Lotus's sage was in trouble, Chu Kuangren would not sit idly by. His figure turned into a stream of light and dashed towards her. At this time, in the sky above a valley, two sages were engaged in a battle. One was a man, and the other was a woman. The woman was the School of White Lotus's sage. The man wore a set of black armor and held a long spear in his hand. His aura was unstoppable, and every thrust of his spear would form a terrifying black tornado that forced the School of White Lotus's sage to retreat. Immemorial Sage, you should just surrender. The Immemorial Sage was the title of the School of White Lotus's sage. The man in armor seemed to be very familiar with her. Ravenblade Sage, you want me to surrender? Dream on. The Immemorial Sage glared at the Ravenblade Sage coldly. She stared back at him with hatred in her eyes. The Ravenblade Sage grinned when he saw the hatred in his opponent's eyes. Looks like you're still holding a grudge against Qianin. Shut up. You have no right to mention her name. The Immemorial Sage said coldly. She waved her hand and unleashed a white ray of light, but it was easily shattered by the Ravenblade Sage. Why not? No matter what, she's still my wife. The Ravenblade Sage chuckled as if he was trying to provoke the Immemorial Sage. B****. Back when you and Qianin got married, you swore to me that you would take good care of her. But in the end, you sacrificed her to the so-called serpent deity just to become a sage. You deserve to die. The White Lotus Sage was furious. With a wave of her hand, rays of white light shot out from her palm. It was the School of White Lotus's light of purification. However, the Ravenblade Sage was obviously stronger. As he waved his spear, a black tornado surrounded his body and shattered the white light. Now that we're done reminiscing, it's time to end you. Don't worry, I'll bring your corpse back. The next time we sacrifice it to the serpent deity, your sage body will be the best sacrifice. The Ravenblade Sage burst into laughter as an extremely overbearing sage Daoist rhyme erupted from his body. Black Snake Devour. As he struck out with his spear, his boundless Daoist rhymes mixed with his spiritual power transformed into a ferocious-looking black snake shadow that charged towards the Immemorial Sage. In the face of this attack, Immemorial Sage would not be able to withstand it. At this moment, White lotuses suddenly surrounded the immemorial sage, containing some sort of powerful purifying power. They disintegrated the Ravenblade sage's attacks one by one, leaving the immemorial sage unharmed. What? The Ravenblade saint's expression changed drastically. You've learned the White Lotus light of purification left behind by the White Lotus saint ruler? He had some understanding of the White Lotus Society. He knew that these White Lotuses were the White Lotus Society's supreme defensive technique, the White Lotus light of purification. No, you didn't do this. Soon, the Ravenblade sage realized that the Daoist rhyme of the White Lotuses did not come from the immemorial sage. Instead, it came from someone else. The immemorial sage seemed to have thought of something, and she could not help but smile. Ravenblade sage, your doomsday is here. She turned around and looked into the distance. All she saw was a white-robed, wide-sleeved figure walking through the air. That otherworldly aura of his made everything in the world pale in comparison to him. The Ravenblade sage looked at the newcomer solemnly. Who are you? Immemorial sage, I'm protecting you. Chu Kuangren said without hesitation. Humph, just because you said so? You're looking down on me a little too much. The Ravenblade sage raised his arm and attacked Chu Kuangren. With a thrust of his spear, a black tornado swept out. However, Chu Kuangren did not move an inch. Instead, mysterious white lotuses appeared around him, disintegrating the black tornado one by one. The White Lotus light of purification. Who are you to the school of White Lotus? The Ravenblade sage's pupils dilated. Chu Kuangren had used the White Lotus light of purification to easily block his attacks. Even the immemorial sage could not compare to him in terms of ability. Brother Chu, you mustn't let this person leave. The immemorial sage yelled with a deep hatred in her voice. Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised. It seemed that this sage had quite a grudge with the immemorial sage. This is bad. Let's retreat first. The Ravenblade sage did not dare to stay any longer after he realized that Chu Kuangren was not an easy opponent. His figure turned into a shadow and disappeared on the spot. Heh, trying to escape? Chu Kuangren chuckled. A black chain suddenly appeared in his hand. It was the soul retriever that he had not used for a long time. The soul retriever turned into a black ray of light. Its speed was even faster than the escaping Ravenblade sage. It did not take long for it to catch up to him. It wrapped around him tightly and dragged him back. D***, what is this thing? Let go of me. The Ravenblade sage continuously channeled his spiritual power to resist the soul retriever. However, it was futile. With Chu Kuangren's current cultivation level, even a sage would find it hard to escape once he was caught by the soul retriever. Only a great sage would have a chance of escaping. Thank you, Brother Chu. The immemorial sage came before the Ravenblade sage with a deep hatred in her eyes. I shall avenge Qian Yin today. She raised her hand and slammed it onto the Ravenblade sage's body. The horrifying energy instantly sent the Ravenblade sage flying back with blood spewing out of his mouth. When he landed on the ground, a crater of a few dozen feet was formed. The immemorial sage was still not appeased. She came to the crater and continuously slammed her palm against the Ravenblade sage. One palm after another, a violent surge of palm chi spread out and expanded the crater to a few hundred feet wide. Chu Kuangren was speechless as he watched from the side. It seemed like there was a grudge between the two of them. However, he did not ask any questions nor did he stop the immemorial sage. On one side was an ally, and on the other side was a stranger. It was obvious which side he should help. Under the restraint of the soul retriever, the Ravenblade sage could not resist at all. Soon, he was beaten half to death. Killing you just like that is too easy for you, the immemorial sage said coldly as she stared at the bloodied Ravenblade sage on the ground. Chu Kuangren gently tugged on the soul retriever from the side. The hook of the soul retriever pierced into the Ravenblade sage's body. After stirring it for a while, the Ravenblade sage's soul was hooked out. This is his soul. Attacking his soul will make him suffer 100 times the pain, Chu Kuangren said. The immemorial sage's eyes lit up. Thank you. You're welcome. The Ravenblade sage glared at Chu Kuangren. B****, I've never met you before. Why must you harm me like this? You scum, everyone has the right to punish you. The immemorial sage condensed her spiritual power into a white needle and ruthlessly pierced it into the Ravenblade sage's soul. Ah! The soul-piercing pain made the Ravenblade sage scream as his soul started to tremble violently. The immemorial sage did not stop there. The spiritual needles continued to pierce into the Ravenblade sage's soul. With every pierce, his soul would weaken a little. In the end, the Ravenblade sage was tortured to death by the immemorial sage. Chapter 325. After killing the Ravenblade sage, the immemorial sage heaved a sigh of relief. Qian Yin, I've avenged you. Chu Kuangren watched from the side and quietly put away the soul retriever. Thank you for your help, Brother Chu. After the immemorial sage vented her emotions, she walked up to Chu Kuangren and bowed. You're welcome. Chu Kuangren said with a curious look on his face. I wonder what kind of grudge you have with this sage, Brother Daoist, for you to hate him so much. It's a long story. Immemorial sage smiled bitterly. She briefly explained what had happened. It turned out that the immemorial sage had a younger sister. When she was young, she traveled around the world and met the Ravenblade sage, who was also traveling at that time. The two of them met and fell in love with each other. After that, the younger sister of the immemorial sage ignored the objections of the White Lotus Society and resolutely followed the Ravenblade sage to settle down overseas. She became the wife of the island lord of the Ravenwind Island. However, as time passed, so did the Ravenblade saint. In order to transcend the tribulation and become a sage, the Ravenblade sage sacrificed his lover to a terrifying being known as the Serpent God. After hearing the news, immemorial sage was filled with grief and indignation. She went to Ravengale Island, but due to her limited power, she was unable to take revenge. If it weren't for the fact that I had to watch over the White Lotus cult all these years, I would have dragged this scum down with me even if I had to sacrifice my life. I didn't expect to meet this person again on this trip to this nameless island. I'm very grateful for your help, fellow Chu. Immemorial sage bowed again. It was obvious that she was very grateful to Chu Kuangren. Despite being a sage, she still bowed to him repeatedly. Brother Qianyu, there's no need to be so courteous. The Black Heaven sect and the School of White Lotus are allies. Moreover, this scum deserves to be punished. Chu Kuangren glanced at the Ravenblade sage's corpse on the ground. He then lifted his arm to unleash the gluttonous devouring technique, sucking the corpse into the avarice dimension and refining it. Seeing this, immemorial sage's eyes gleamed with joy. It would be best if the Ravenblade sage died without a complete corpse. Speaking of which, I'm quite interested in that serpent deity. Brother Qianyu, do you know who it is? Chu Kuangren asked. Immemorial sage shook her head. The origin of the serpent deity is a mystery. All we know is that its strength is terrifying. It is the deity worshipped by the 36 oceanic islands. Every once in a while, a large number of sacrifices will be offered to it. Even the sages have to bow down to him? Yes. Immemorial sage nodded slightly. Looks like it's indeed a terrifying existence. Chu Kuangren pondered for a moment before he put the matter aside for the time being. Boom! At this moment, the island suddenly shook. Ripples appeared in the space in the distance, and an incredibly heavy Emperor's aura instantly engulfed the entire island. This Emperor's aura was far stronger than the one before. Chu Kuangren's expression changed slightly as he looked into the distance. There's a quasi-emperor body 3,000 kilometers to the south, 3,000 miles to the south, there is an incomplete emperor's body, there's a damaged monarch weapon 3,000 li south. The feedback of the treasure-seeking art came. He could now accurately sense the aura of those treasures. The barrier that isolated these few treasures has disappeared. A hint of surprise flashed across Chu Kuangren's eyes as he dashed towards the center of the island. Seeing this, the immemorial sage followed closely behind. In the center of the nameless island, a thatched cottage appeared out of nowhere, and the incredibly dense emperor's aura emanated from this cottage. The sages on the island sensed this aura and rushed over. Soon, the area around the cottage was surrounded by sages, but no one dared to step within 100 meters of the cottage. It was as if the area within 100 meters of the cottage was a forbidden area. This island is located in the outer seas, not within the 4 domains. Therefore, the items in this cottage should belong to the outer seas sages. At that moment, one of the outer seas sages said. The other outer seas sages agreed with him. Not bad, Sage Lu has a point. Let's not talk about the items in this cottage. Logically speaking, this entire nameless island should belong to the 36 oceanic islands. Allowing the 4 domain sages to explore this island is already the best we can do. That's right. Please leave now. The outer seas sages began to ostracize the 4 domain sages. The 4 domain sages did not look too pleased. Aren't you outer seas being too overbearing? This nameless island has no owner, so what right do you have to claim that it belongs to you? Just because you're living in the ocean? You're making a fool of yourself. Black Heaven's second forefather snorted coldly. The other 4 domain sages also supported him. Black Heaven's second forefather is right. According to this logic, if I live in the Vermilion Bird domain, doesn't that mean that the entire Vermilion Bird domain belongs to me? That's right. You don't even think about what you're saying. This is ridiculous. The 4 domain sages and the outer seas sages were in a heated argument. However, it was obvious that the 4 domain sages were at a disadvantage. After all, this was the outer seas sages' territory. When the nameless island appeared, the 36 oceanic islands were the first to discover it. They also had the most sages, numbering more than 30. The 4 domain sages were far away. Although they had sensed the situation on the nameless island, there were less than 20 of them present. In short, this cottage belongs to the outer seas. Cultivators from the 4 domains are not allowed to interfere. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless. An outer seas sage snorted coldly. He was the leader of the sages and also one of the most powerful sages present. He had already reached the great sage level. The 4 domain sages were extremely displeased at his words. Some of the more hot-tempered ones even rolled up their sleeves, ready to fight. However, they were stopped by some rational sages. The outer seas sages had the advantage in numbers. If a fight broke out, the situation would not be optimistic for the 4 domain sages. D***MN. Are we just going to watch these outer seas sages act so arrogantly? One of the sages said indignantly. Everyone, please leave. The outer seas sage said calmly. Ever-sodden sage, do you really want to do this? Black Heaven's second forefather said coldly. So what if I do? Ever-sodden sage snorted. If you guys don't leave now, don't blame us for asking you to leave. As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere at the scene immediately became hostile. The outer seas sages stood behind Ever-sodden sage, glaring coldly at the 4 domain sages. It seemed like they would attack at any time. Oh, I'd like to see who dares to ask us to leave. At that moment, an indifferent voice drifted into everyone's ears. 2 figures walked out from behind the 4 domain sages. They were a man and a woman, and the one who spoke was the young man in front. It's the school of White Lotus immemorial sage, An Chu Kuangren. He's here. The four domain sages' eyes glimmered when they saw who it was. When Chu Kuangren walked into the crowd, the sages around him immediately retreated and opened up a path for him. Greetings, second forefather, third forefather. Chu Kuangren came before the Black Heaven's second forefather and third forefather and greeted them with a fist salute. Kuangren, you're here. Black Heaven's second forefather looked at Chu Kuangren with a gratified expression. Yes. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly. He then looked at the Outer Seas sages and said, the treasures in this cottage belong to the most capable. Let's all compete fairly. I'd like to see who can force us to leave. Chapter 326. I'd like to see who can force us to leave. As soon as he said that, the sages of the four domains behind Chu Kuangren unleashed their powerful auras. Ever-sodden sage's eyes flashed as he stared at Chu Kuangren. He realized that Chu Kuangren's appearance had given the four domain sages an inexplicable sense of confidence. He was like a pillar that held up the four domain sages. Since when did the four domains have someone like him? Ever-sodden sage was a little shocked. May I know your name? I'm the Black Heaven sect leader, Chu Kuangren. Ever-sodden sage was even more shocked when he heard that name. He had heard of Chu Kuangren before. Chu Kuangren had been quite famous for the past few years. Although he was not very famous in the Outer Seas, Ever-sodden sage still knew about him. He was a peerless sky pride. However, how could a sky pride give the sages such confidence? Isn't this a little too strange? Unfortunately, although Ever-sodden sage knew who Chu Kuangren was, he did not know much about him. Otherwise, he would not have such doubts. Chu Kuangren was no longer the same person he was in the past. He had single-handedly fought 6 sages in the first city and suppressed a great sage. His strength had long been recognized by the other sages. Without a doubt, Chu Kuangren was their most reliable ally at this time. The four domain sages are really regressing. A bunch of sages actually have to rely on a Black Heaven sect leader who's not even a sage to give orders. One of the Outer Seas sage could not help but sneer. He looked at Chu Kuangren. Kid, you may be a peerless sky pride in the four domains for becoming a sect leader at such a young age, but you better take a good look at the situation here. Everyone here is a sage, so there's no place for that kid to speak. Get lost. That Outer Seas sage snorted and launched a palm attack at Chu Kuangren. His goal was simple. He wanted to cripple Chu Kuangren first, then force the four domain sages to leave. No matter how powerful Chu Kuangren was, even if he made the boldest assumption that he could fight a sage, so what? The Outer Seas sages had an absolute advantage here. Even if they were to fight, the four domain sages would not be able to gain any advantage. The surging sage Daoist rhyme locked onto Chu Kuangren. That palm attack was like a bolt of lightning that could not be blocked by anyone below the level of a sage. Just when the Outer Seas sages thought that Chu Kuangren would be severely injured by that attack, Chu Kuangren casually lifted his fair palm and launched a palm attack as well. The fair palm collided with the palm of the saint that was attacking him. In that instant, an incomparably terrifying shockwave erupted. Two completely different Daoist rhymes collided with each other. Then, the outcome was decided in an instant. That Outer Seas sage let out a blood-curdling scream. His palm cheese Daoist rhyme was forcefully shattered by Chu Kuangren. His arm exploded, his bones pierced through his flesh, and his entire body was blasted hundreds of meters away. This scene caused all the overseas sages to narrow their eyes and their faces to be filled with shock. However, the sages of the four territories remained calm and composed, clearly not surprised by this scene. How could this be? What a terrifying power. Is this really the power of someone below the saint level? How did this guy do it? It was the first time the Outer Seas sages witnessed Chu Kuangren's combat strength, so they could not help but be shocked. Even their Daoist cores trembled. Now, is there anyone else who wants to force us to leave? Chu Kuangren swept his gaze across the crowd as a surge of sword-based Daoist rhyme rapidly rose from his body. The Outer Seas sages were filled with fear. Ever-sodden sage, who was the leader, stared at Chu Kuangren as his aura continued to rise as well. A terrifying surge of great sage Daoist rhyme filled the air. Chu Kuangren, on the other hand, stood still as his Daoist rhyme circulated. The Daoist rhyme that belonged to the 8 celestial demonic chords instantly gushed out. Vaguely, the sound of Guqin music could be heard in the void. The Daoist chordless. It could be played even without a chord. This kind of musical Dao realm and Daoist rhyme made ever-sodden sage's eyes reveal an unprecedented seriousness. This guy is clearly not a sage, but his Daoist rhyme is on par with a great sage like me. How did he do it? Ever-sodden sage was puzzled, but he was also extremely fearful. All right, then we shall do as you say. The treasures in this cottage shall belong to whoever is capable. Ever-sodden sage said after pondering for a while. Chu Kuangren's strength was unfathomable, and their main goal now was to obtain the treasures in the cottage. Hence, ever-sodden sage did not want to have any conflict with Chu Kuangren at this time. Very well. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly. Since they had reached an agreement, the crowd once again turned their attention to the cottage that was hundreds of meters away. Their eyes were filled with passion. With such a powerful emperor's aura, there must be some incredible treasures in that cottage. Was it an emperor scripture? Or an emperor weapon? Could it be the body of some great emperor? The crowd secretly speculated as their hearts burned with passion. The Emperor's aura within hundreds of meters of this cottage is on a completely different level compared to outside. If you want to enter the cottage, you'll have to pass through these hundreds of meters of Emperor's aura. Even a sage would find it difficult to do that. Ever-sodden sage said. Let's see who's capable then. The treasures inside the cottage shall belong to whoever enters first, one of the sages said. He then stepped into the hundreds of meters of Emperor's aura and slowly walked towards the cottage. The rest of the sages followed suit. A sage could traverse thousands of kilometers with a single step, but now, the group of sages was stumbling within the hundreds of meters of the cottage. If word of this were to spread, many people would be scared witless. Kuangren, let's go too, Black Heaven's third and second forefather said before they too walked into the range of the Emperor's aura. Chu Kuangren lifted his foot and walked in too. In an instant, a terrifying Emperor's aura pressed down on him like a huge mountain. It's really strong. Chu Kuangren's expression froze. No one below the level of a sage could withstand this Emperor's aura. Even an honorable supreme would be flattened to the ground if they went near it. Even a sage would find it extremely difficult to walk. Not only that, but the closer they got to the cottage, the more terrifying the Emperor's aura became. Boom! A sage could no longer withstand the Emperor's aura after walking for hundreds of meters. He was flattened to the ground by it. Boom, 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 another few sages were flattened to the ground. It's too powerful. A sage won't be able to withstand this Emperor's aura. Terrifying. The few sages who were lying on the ground stared at the cottage in horror. That was the Emperor's aura. Even though it was not a complete Emperor's aura, it was enough to crush a sage. At that moment, a white-robed figure easily passed by the sages. The sages stared at that figure in disbelief. How can he walk so easily when we're all being suppressed to this state? D***M, who's the real sage here? Oh my god. That white-robed figure was Chu Kuangren. He had been studying the Emperor's scripture for years, so his resistance to the Emperor's aura was much higher than the sages. Moreover, he had learned several Emperor techniques that contained Emperor's aura. All of these made it extremely easy for him to pass through the Emperor's aura. Soon, he was far ahead of the sages. Who the hell is this guy? Ever-sodden Sage and the other Outer Seas sages were dumbfounded. Chapter 327. Chu Kuangren walked towards the cottage step by step. His pace was not fast, but it was unusually steady. On the other hand, the other sages had to use all their strength to barely move a step or two. This won't do. If this goes on, the things in this cottage will be taken away by this guy. Ever-sodden Sage thought. He took a deep breath and took out a jade pendant. That jade pendant was crystal clear and contained an emperor's aura. Everyone was shocked. An emperor weapon? No, it's not an emperor weapon. It's probably something that an emperor used to wear when he was alive. That's why it has such an aura. I can't believe Ever-sodden Sage has such a treasure on him. Everyone could not help but be surprised. After Ever-sodden Sage took out that jade pendant, the emperor's aura on it and the cottage's emperor's aura resisted each other, allowing him to catch up to Chu Kuangren in no time. Meanwhile, the others began to use all kinds of trump cards. Some used secret techniques to activate their Daoist rhymes, some used sage weapons to increase their strength, and some unleashed their sage technique Daoist rhymes. However, no matter what trump card they used, it was no match for the jade pendant in Ever-sodden Sage's hand. That jade pendant alone was enough to match all the trump cards of the sages. The Emperor's aura could only be resisted with the Emperor's aura. That was the most effective method. The Emperor suppresses all techniques. All other techniques would be suppressed by the Emperor's aura. Soon, Ever-sodden Sage and Chu Kuangren were walking side by side. The distance between the two of them and the cottage was less than 400 feet. Fellow Daoist, your strength is amazing, but this is the 36 Oceanic Islands territory. The treasures in this cottage are ours, Ever-sodden Sage said confidently. Chu Kuangren glanced at him but did not say anything. Crack. At that moment, a crisp sound was heard. Cracks appeared on the jade pendant in Ever-sodden Sage's hand. The Emperor's aura on it was about to be depleted. A series of crisp cracking sounds were heard, and with the last crack, the jade pendant in Ever-sodden Sage's hand turned into dust. The dust was blown away by the wind. What? Ever-sodden Sage's expression changed. Then, the Emperor's aura, which had lost its resistance from the jade pendant, landed on Ever-sodden Sage and almost crushed him to the ground. Damn it! The Ever-sodden Sage bent his knees and circulated all the strength in his body to resist the powerful Emperor's aura around him. Heh, you'd better straighten your back first. Chu Kuangren smiled. He straightened his back and slowly walked towards the thatched cottage. Damn brat! Being mocked by Chu Kuangren, Ever-sodden Sage was enraged. He wanted to catch up to Chu Kuangren, but to no avail. He took out a broken blade. A terrifying Emperor's aura emanated from the broken blade. That's a sovereign weapon, a broken sovereign weapon. A hint of surprise flashed across Chu Kuangren's eyes. He had never thought that the Everwater Saint would have such a thing. Adding on the jade pendant that contained the Emperor's aura, Zhao Fu had never expected the Everwater Saint to have such a thing. It seemed like this Ever-sodden Sage's fortuitous encounter was not shallow. The things in this thatched cottage can only be mine. Ever-sodden Sage held the broken saber in his hand and activated the Emperor's aura on it. Soon, he caught up to Chu Kuangren. At this moment, the two of them were less than 200 feet away from the thatched cottage, leaving the other sages far behind. The things in here can only be mine. Ever-sodden Sage overtook Chu Kuangren and quickly walked towards the thatched cottage. 100 feet, 100 feet, 170 feet, 160 feet, when there was less than 100 feet left, Ever-sodden Sage's footsteps slowed down again. Every step he took was extremely difficult. Chu Kuangren, who was behind him, also noticed that the Emperor's aura within the last 100 feet of the thatched cottage had increased by more than a level. Chu Kuangren also felt the pressure. Was he going to give up just like that? No. Impossible. The 6 supreme foundation levels within Chu Kuangren's spiritual mound shone brightly as he activated his 3 supreme Daoist physiques to resist the aura. Seeing Chu Kuangren surrounded by various Daoist rhymes, the sages behind him were dumbfounded. They were in disbelief. F*ck me, so many Daoist physiques? How did this guy do it? 3 supreme Daoist physiques? By the heavens, how can such a person exist in this world? How can the 4 domains have someone like that? The sages were extremely shocked. At that moment, Chu Kuangren was already within 100 feet of the thatched cottage. He stood next to Eversodden Sage, who was wielding his broken saber. He could also feel the terrifying Emperor's aura. No wonder Eversodden Sage, who had a broken Emperor weapon, was having such a hard time. The Emperor's aura here was indeed terrifying. Chu Kuangren had already given it his all, but it was still incredibly taxing. Just as he was about to activate the 9 Deaths Blazing Blood art, the Eternal Emperor Scripture and Mindful Emperor Scripture in his Yin and Yang ring seemed to have sensed something and released 2 surges of Emperor's aura at the same time. As if they were stimulated by the Emperor's aura in the thatched cottage, the aura released by the 2 Emperor Scriptures was much stronger than when Chu Kuangren was comprehending it. These 2 surges of Emperor's aura surrounded Chu Kuangren, blocking out the Emperor's aura from the thatched cottage. I didn't expect this. Chu Kuangren smirked and walked towards the thatched cottage. It was as if he was taking a stroll in the park. He was extremely relaxed and faster than when he first started. Eversodden Sage, who had given it his all, was dumbfounded. He could not believe what he was seeing. What's going on? How can he walk so easily? What method did he use? Eversodden Sage aside, all the sages at the scene, including the sages of the 4 domains who thought they were familiar with Chu Kuangren's abilities, could not help but be shocked. The last 10 feet should be the place where the Emperor's aura was the densest and most difficult to pass. How could Chu Kuangren walk so easily? Soon, Chu Kuangren arrived at the door of the thatched cottage. No, don't. The things in there are mine. You can't take them. Eversodden Sage yelled from behind Chu Kuangren. With all his might, he took 2 steps forward, but he was still 7 or 8 feet away from Chu Kuangren. In his panic, he even channeled his spiritual power and unleashed a palm attack. However, before his palm chi could even get close to Chu Kuangren, it was disintegrated by the Emperor's aura. It could not hurt Chu Kuangren at all. Heh, take your time. I'll go in and have a look. Chu Kuangren smiled nonchalantly and pushed open the thatched cottage's wooden door. He walked in and saw that it was no different from an ordinary thatched cottage. The only difference was that there was a man sitting cross-legged on the bed. It was a tall, white-haired, handsome man with mysterious Daoist rhymes circulating around his body. Even though he was sitting there without moving, he still gave off an extremely oppressive aura. However, what caught Chu Kuangren's attention was not the white-haired man, but the head in front of the white-haired man. It was a woman's head. Her facial features were so beautiful that they looked like they were carved from jade. That head lay quietly on the bed. The Emperor's aura that filled the thatched cottage and even the entire island was emanating from that head. That was right. It was not the complete white-haired man, but the woman who only had a head. What kind of existence was this woman when she was alive? Chu Kuangren could not help but wonder. Chapter 328. What kind of existence was this lady when she was alive? Chu Kuangren could not help but wonder. Just her head alone could release an emperor's aura that enveloped the entire island, making it difficult for sages to approach her. What kind of existence was she when she was alive? Chu Kuangren activated his eye of revelation. When his gaze landed on the lady's head, only a small amount of information emerged. Great Emperor's head. Name unknown. Cultivation unknown. Currently in a living dead state. Host, please be careful, What? A living dead state? What was going on? Her head was chopped off, but her body was nowhere to be seen. Was she in a living dead state? However, when Chu Kuangren thought about it, he had the immortal body. Even if his head was blown off, he could still come back to life. When he thought about it, he felt like he was more powerful than this lady. At that thought, Chu Kuangren felt relieved. He then looked at the white-haired man beside him. Heavenly Battle Sage Ruler, Boundary Emperor Realm Cultivation, dead. It was a Boundary Emperor. Although a Boundary Emperor was still within the realm of a Sage Ruler, the difference between an Honorable Supreme and a Boundary Sage was like the difference between clouds and mud. It was the most powerful person below an Emperor, so Chu Kuangren did not know how he died here. Chu Kuangren continued to channel his spiritual power into his Eye of Revelation to analyze the other party. Preserved Daoist rhyme is 40% complete. Time of death is around 70,000 years. Cause of death is suspected to have gone berserk. After a round of analysis, Chu Kuangren did not immediately touch the 1.5 corpses. Instead, he began to scan the entire cottage. Soon, he discovered that there were a few other items on the table in the thatched cottage. They were a wooden box, a booklet, and a broken bronze mirror. Chu Kuangren walked up and picked up the booklet. When he flipped it open, a strange look flashed across his eyes. A diary? That booklet was a diary. I know it's not nice to read someone else's diary, but since you're already dead, you shouldn't mind, right? Chu Kuangren glanced at the white-haired man before he began to flip through the diary. Today, I've failed again. I'm already a Boundary Emperor, but I still can't break through that last barrier. Is it true that no one can become an emperor during this era of Dharma's end? This lady must have been an extremely powerful being when she was alive. Just her head alone has such a terrifying emperor's aura. This is a great opportunity of fortune, and I can see the hope of becoming an emperor. Horrifying, absolutely horrifying. This woman was still alive. She's releasing some kind of fluctuation, as if she's sending some kind of signal. She came, that woman came. She didn't have a head, so she came to me for her head. But I couldn't give it to her. This is my hope of becoming an emperor. I fought with her, and perhaps because she didn't have a head, she couldn't display the battle prowess of an emperor. I paid the price of my emperor armament, the green origin mirror, and luckily escaped. Today, I went overseas and found an island. I set up layers of barriers and escaped into the void to isolate myself from the headless woman's senses. I hope that the next time we meet, I can make a breakthrough. At that time, I will definitely return this head to her. Many precious herbs have been growing on the island recently. It's all because of that woman's brain. The Emperor realm is truly too mysterious. Today, I'm going into death's seclusion. This time, if I don't succeed, I'll die trying. I refuse to believe that no one will become an emperor in the end of days. In the end of days, no one had become an emperor. The diary ended abruptly at this point. The result was predictable. The heavenly battle sage ruler failed to ascend to the emperor realm and died from chi deviation. However, Chu Kuangren was horrified when he finished reading the diary. The owner of this head, a headless woman, was looking for it. F***ck, I feel like I'm watching a horror movie. Chu Kuangren shuddered. Then, he seemed to have thought of something. This island was hidden in the void before, and there were layers of barriers set up around it to isolate the headless woman's senses. So now. D***it. Chu Kuangren's expression changed slightly. The island had once again appeared on the sea, and he did not sense any energy reaction from the surroundings. Did that mean that the barriers had failed? If that was the case, the headless woman would most likely sense the head again and come looking for it. After all, that was an existence that even a boundary emperor could not handle. How could a small body like Chu Kuangren stand a chance against it? No, I have to think of something. Chu Kuangren was secretly anxious. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He opened his inventory and took out a talisman. This is a starlight grade talisman, a sealing talisman. It can be used to seal all abnormal things. I wonder if it'll work. He had obtained this sealing talisman from the gacha roll. Initially, he did not know what it was used for, but now, he might be able to give it a try. He walked forward and was about to place the talisman on the head. However, he stopped and turned around to put the diary, bronze mirror, and the unknown wooden box into his yin and yang ring. He also threw the Boundary Emperor's corpse into the ring. After that, he carefully stepped forward and placed the talisman on the woman's head. When his finger touched the woman's forehead, he felt a warm sensation. It felt like a living person to the touch. After the talisman was placed, the head began to tremble. Chu Kuangren could clearly see a struggling expression on the expressionless head, which scared him so much that he almost pulled out his descendant's self-sword. However, after a while, the head regained its calm and became expressionless again. The surrounding emperor's aura also instantly dissipated. I did it. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up as he kept the head into his yin and yang ring. In the outside world, the moment the emperor's aura disappeared, the sages were stunned for a moment before their expressions changed. The emperor's aura disappeared. It must be that kid. What did he do? Quick, let's go in and have a look. Ever-sodden sage, who was at the forefront, rushed into the cottage. Chu Kuangren had already stored everything of value in the cottage, including the woman's head, into his yin and yang ring. Looking at the empty cottage, Ever-sodden sage's expression turned grim. Kid, hand over the treasures now. Otherwise, I'll make sure you never leave this island. Chu Kuangren smiled. Oh, are you threatening me? So what if I am? Heh, you can come and try then. Chu Kuangren was not afraid anymore. It was just a great sage. It was not like he had never fought against one before. Don't blame me then. Sky Ripple Palm. Ever-sodden sage raised his arm and unleashed a palm attack. The violent palm chi contained a surge of Daoist rhyme erupted like a tsunami. Because of this palm, circles of ripples appeared in the void. Chu Kuangren also unleashed a palm attack. The majestic human mountain energy erupted. The impact from the collision of the two surges of Daoist rhyme instantly destroyed the cottage that was no longer protected by the emperor's aura. The sages outside the cottage were also forced to take a few steps back. They're fighting. So it's that kid who took the treasures. Humph, this is the outer seas. It won't be that easy to take the treasures away. Does he really think Ever-sodden sage will let him go? Chapter 329. The two palms collided and a violent shockwave swept out. Chu Kuangren and the Ever-sodden sage were both forced to retreat. Meanwhile, the outer sea sages also rushed forward and surrounded Chu Kuangren. Kid, hand over the treasure and I'll spare your life. That's right. Otherwise, you won't be able to leave this island. The outer seas sages glared at Chu Kuangren. Upon seeing that, Chu Kuangren simply said, then I'd like to see how you guys are going to make me unable to walk out of this place. As soon as he finished speaking, he placed the zither in front of his chest. His 10 fingers pressed on the zither strings, ready to strike. Meanwhile, when the sages from the 4 domains saw Chu Kuangren take out his guqin, their expressions changed slightly, and they quickly retreated. They looked at the sages from the endless seas with pity in their eyes. These guys didn't know what kind of lunatic they were going to face. Humph, zither Dao. No matter how strong your zither music is, do you think you can defeat more than 30 sages here? One of the sages sneered before his figure moved and charged towards Chu Kuangren. A terrifying surge of Daoist rhyme instantly erupted. Upon seeing that, Chu Kuangren plucked the guqin strings with his fingers and a loud clang was heard. Third movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords, Great Yellow Bell Lu. the terrifying sound of the zither erupted. The sage's Daoist rhyme was torn apart in an instant, and the incomparably violent power sent the sage flying. After flying for hundreds of feet, he smashed onto the ground. His muscles and bones were all broken, and he was no longer breathing. This scene caused everyone present to be shocked. A sage had actually been killed by the sound of a zither. What kind of terrifying zither Dao was this? What the hell is going on with this guy's cultivation? Isn't he a venerable? The overseas sages were extremely fearful. It had always been supremacies who were killed by saints. Since when had a supremacy ever killed a saint? This simply made their worldview collapse. Come, everyone, please. Chu Kuangren plucked the bowstring and gestured to the crowd with a prideful look on his face. Coupled with the fact that he had killed a sage in an instant, no one dared to act rashly. Seeing this, ever-sodden sage made the first move. He was a great sage, so he had the ability to do so. Upon seeing that, Chu Kuangren immediately activated the 9 Deaths blazing blood art. The aura on his body skyrocketed, and all 10 of his fingers swiftly plucked at the strings of the guqin. Swallowing 10,000 miles. Raging waves beating the shore. The 5th and 6th movements of the 8 celestial and demonic chords were performed simultaneously. The incomparably violent guqin music attacked ever-sodden sage, clashing with the Daoist rhymes on his body, causing the surrounding void to rumble. The rest of the sages were shocked by this terrifying power. No one dared to go forward. They even retreated, afraid that they would be affected. Too powerful. Where did this guy come from? Putting aside the zither Dao that he uses, why is that blood-colored flame on his body somewhat similar to the legendary 9 Deaths blazing blood art? What kind of joke is this? Isn't the 9 Deaths blazing blood technique a taboo suicide technique for sages? How dare he use it? Not to mention the overseas saints, even the saints of the 4 regions were secretly speechless. Naturally, they knew that Chu Kuangren knew the 9 Deaths blazing blood art, but they did not expect him to use it as an ordinary technique. It's a forbidden technique, yet he can use it at will. Could it be that he has a way to resist the side effects of this technique? That's impossible. Even after so many years of research, no one has been able to make up for this flaw. Otherwise, why would it be classified as taboo? Just because the previous sages couldn't do it doesn't mean that Chu Kuangren can't. Don't forget, this guy can't be measured with common sense. Upon hearing that, the sages fell silent. They had seen too much of Chu Kuangren's terrifying abilities in the past few years. Chu Kuangren had done many things that everyone thought were impossible. So even if he had a way to resist the side effects of the 9 Deaths blazing blood art, it did not seem that difficult to accept. Torrential waves. Honorable Ever-Sodden suddenly let out a loud roar, and a horrifying surge of Daoist rhyme erupted from his body. The sound of splashing water could be heard in the void. That surge of Daoist rhyme carried an extremely chilling energy that intertwined with the guqin music. For a moment, it overpowered the guqin music. Oh, this is some kind of sage ruler technique. Coupled with the fact that this person's cultivation level has reached the great sage standard, it's no wonder that he can unleash such combat strength. Chu Kuangren was surprised. Although he had a bunch of sage ruler techniques and emperor techniques, he knew that sage ruler techniques were extremely rare. Most sages only used ordinary sage techniques. Faced with Honorable Ever-Sodden's Daoist rhyme attack, Chu Kuangren suddenly changed his tune and unleashed an even more powerful guqin music Daoist rhyme. In an instant, the clouds in the sky surged, and thunder rumbled. Even the ground was affected as earth chi surged and the ground trembled. It was as if the heavens and the earth were accompanying this guqin music. 7th movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords, heavenly and earthly reverberation. The horrifying guqin music erupted, wave after wave, from the heavens and the earth, gushing towards Ever-Sodden sage from all directions. That power was just too shocking. Even ever-sodden sage could not help but be shocked. He frantically channeled his Daoist rhyme to resist the Guqin music Daoist rhyme. The splashing sound of water and the majestic Guqin music collided. Gradually, the sound of water faded away, but the Guqin music grew louder. D*****. Myriad rivers converge. Ever-sodden sage let out a long roar and channeled the spiritual power in his body to its limit. He even took out the broken saber that he used to resist the Emperor's aura and used its Emperor's aura to strengthen his own cultivation technique. In an instant it was as if thousands of streams in the sky converged towards ever-sodden sage, forming an extremely majestic and terrifying Daoist rhyme that was as vast as the boundless ocean. It then surged towards Chu Kuangren. The Guqin music was forcefully broken at that moment. Go to hell, kid. That attack was ever-sodden sage's strongest attack. It was so powerful that even the void was distorted. It was as if an ocean had really converged on ever-sodden sage's body and smashed towards Chu Kuangren. This B***** is dead meat. The outer seas sages stared at that scene. In their opinion, Chu Kuangren would not be able to withstand that attack. Not many people in the entire 36 oceanic islands could. Under the watchful eyes of the sages, Chu Kuangren plucked the Guqin strings with his fingers, and the Guqin music between the heavens and earth stopped abruptly. However, there was an earth-shattering, indescribable Daoist rhyme that gathered on Chu Kuangren's body and the Guqin strings at his fingertips. Final movement of the 8 celestial demonic chords. Grand melodic soundless. Chu Kuangren suddenly let go of the Guqin strings, but there was no sound. However, a terrifying Guqin music Daoist rhyme had already erupted. The great Tao was shapeless, and the grand melodic soundless. This was the highest realm of Guqin Tao. It was not that there was no sound, but the sound had already merged with the Daoist Tao. It could not be heard, nor could it be touched, no one knew where it came from, and no one knew when it disappeared. Silence was better than sound. The moment Chu Kuangren let go of the Guqin strings, ever-sodden sage suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. The Guqin music Daoist rhyme rushed towards him. It was majestic and silent, yet it easily destroyed his Daoist rhyme. In an instant, ever-sodden sage's Daoist rhyme was dispersed, and his entire body was struck by the Guqin music Daoist rhyme. Even with his great sage body, his bones, flesh, and blood were instantly shattered, and he was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Chapter 330. The great voice of desolation instantly shattered ever-sodden sage's Daoist rhyme. He slowly walked in front of ever-sodden sage, and before anyone could react, he unsheathed his sword and killed him. This scene shocked all the overseas sages present. That was a great sage. How could he kill him just like that? This level of strength was simply too terrifying. Chu Kuangren stood where he was with a sword in one hand and a Guqin in the other. He said calmly, "Excuse me, is there anyone else who wants my treasures?" He asked very politely. But no one dared to say anything. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren as if they were looking at an evil Asura. Chu Kuangren was a person who could kill even a great sage. There was probably not a single person present who could stand a chance against him. Whether they could kill Chu Kuangren was still a question, but they would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Moreover, the sages of the 4 domains were present as well. For a moment, none of the saints from the outer seas dared to move. Then I'll be taking the treasure. With a chuckle, Chu Kuangren lifted his arm and unleashed a terrifying suction force that sucked the ever-sodden sage into the avarice dimension. Over the past few days, he had encountered a lot of sages and killed quite a few of them. Now, with the addition of a great sage, he had refined so much flesh and blood essence. There were already signs of a breakthrough in his cultivation. One more step and he would be a supreme paragon. 3rd Patriarch, 2nd Patriarch, can we go now? Chu Kuangren asked the 2 forefathers of Black Heaven sect. The two nodded. Then, the three of them left. The rest of the sages looked at each other. There was nothing valuable left here, so they might as well go to other places to take a look. The sages continued to explore the island. Chu Kuangren and the other two had also scavenged the island. With the treasure locating skill at his disposal, his efficiency in scavenging treasures was much higher than the other sages. Black Heaven's third and second forefathers were left speechless by his side. They felt as if Chu Kuangren was strolling in his own backyard, knowing exactly where the treasures were hidden. Chu Kuangren had already gotten his hands on a whole bunch of sage-grade herbs while the others had gone through so much trouble to find a single sage-grade herb. There was no way they could compare. Coupled with the emperor-grade treasures in the cottage, Chu Kuangren could easily claim that he had taken 70 to 80% of the most valuable treasures on this unnamed island. "It's about time to leave," Chu Kuangren said. Third forefather and second forefather nodded. At this moment, the sky suddenly darkened. Suddenly, many celestial boats appeared in the sky. Not only in the sky, but also on the surface of the sea, a group of strange-looking people appeared. Some parts of these people's bodies were more or less covered in scales. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count them all. In a short period of time, the entire nameless island was surrounded. "These are the Scaled Tribe." Chu Kuangren frowned slightly. He had heard of a tribe that lived in the ocean called the Scaled Tribe. They were the rulers of the ocean. "That's right, it's the Scaled Tribe. Why are they here?" Second forefather of Black Heaven frowned. "I am the Scaled Tribe's young master, Bei Mingsan. I would like to invite the Black Heaven sect leader, Chu Kuangren, to show himself." At that moment, a voice came from the sky. In the air, a young man with black hair that reached his shoulders was holding a silver trident. His body was surging with extremely thick Daoist rhymes. What caught people's attention was that apart from a few golden scales on his forehead, this black-haired youth was no different from an ordinary person. In the Scaled Tribe, talent was determined by the number of scales one had. The fewer the scales one had, the better their talent was. It was obvious that this black-haired youth's talent was extraordinary. "Young lad, do you have any grudges with the Scaled Tribe?" Black Heaven's second forefather asked curiously. Chu Kuangren smiled helplessly. "This is my first time meeting someone from the Scaled Tribe. What grudges could there be? If that's the case, then he must be here for the emperor-grade treasure in your hands," third forefather said solemnly. "Let me meet him first," Chu Kuangren said calmly. Then, his figure turned into a stream of light and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Bei Mingsan. Looking at him, he activated his Eye of Revelation and quickly analyzed his opponent's information. Bei Mingsan, the Scaled Tribe's young master, an ancient sky pride from 70,000 years ago with an honorable supreme cultivation base. He cultivates the Scaled Tribe's incomplete northern dark black water technique. His combat strength is comparable to a sage's. An incomplete emperor's scripture? Moreover, it was an emperor's scripture that cultivated the foundation. Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised. Emperor's scriptures that cultivated the foundation were very rare. Even the two emperor's scriptures that Chu Kuangren possessed did not have such a technique. What he had were emperor's insights and emperor techniques. This Bei Mingsan in front of him had an emperor's scripture that cultivated the foundation. Although it was incomplete, it was still many times better than a sage ruler technique. At the very least, his heavenly crescent myrtle sword art could not compare. After all, that cultivation technique was originally just an ordinary sage technique. Although he had improved it many times and it had reached the level of a sage ruler technique, it was still far from being comparable to an emperor's scripture. Could it be that I've met a sky pride that's on par with me this time? Chu Kuangren thought about it and felt a little excited. "You're Chu Kuangren?" The Scaled Tribe's young master, Bei Mingsan, asked. Suddenly, the trident in his hand trembled. Although it was only for a moment, he still noticed it. A look of contemplation flashed across his eyes. Yes. Let me ask you, do you have a halberd with you? Or is the treasure that you obtained in the cottage a halberd? Bei Mingsan's eyes lit up. The movement of the trident reminded him of something, and he could not help but feel a little excited. His purpose of coming here was to obtain the emperor-grade treasures from this island. Now, it seemed that he had an unexpected gain. I don't need to tell you that. How about this, let's have a duel. If you lose, you'll give me the treasures that you obtained in the cottage. What do you think? What if you lose? That's impossible. Bei Mingsan said proudly, ever since I've appeared in this world, I've never lost. Other than me, even the strongest sky pride in the scaled tribe can't take more than 3 moves from me. You're no match for me either. With the trident in his hand, Bei Mingsan's aura surged as Daoist rhyme surrounded him like crashing waves that slammed into the void. Don't be too confident. How about this, if you lose, I don't want anything else. I just want the trident in your hand. What do you think? Chu Kuangren could tell that the trident was extraordinary at first glance. It was surrounded by an aura that was very close to an emperor's aura. It was a boundary emperor weapon. Not only that, but when Chu Kuangren saw the boundary emperor weapon, he could feel the heavens halberd in his yin and yang ring move a little. Coupled with Bei Mingsan's question about whether he had a halberd with him, it was obvious that there was a connection between the two. Do you know what this trident is? Bei Mingsan's expression darkened. What is it? This is the scaled tribe's most precious treasure, and it's also the symbol of the scaled tribe's young master. Do you think you can afford it? The Daoist rhyme on his body intensified and surged towards Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren, on the other hand, stood still. That extremely violent Daoist rhyme was like a gentle breeze to him. It did not affect him at all. Then do you know how much more valuable the treasures I obtained in the cottage is compared to the trident in your hand? Do you think you can afford it? Chu Kuangren said coldly. Everything else aside, that boundary emperor's body alone was worth almost as much as the trident. Not to mention the terrifying great empress head. Are you going to fight or not? Just tell me. What kind of man are you to be so wishy-washy? Chu Kuangren snorted, which made Bei Mingsan's expression turn even darker. Alright, I'll let you. Chapter 331. Alright, I'll grant you your wish. After being provoked by Chu Kuangren, the prideful Bei Mingsan no longer hesitated and agreed. He did not think that he would lose. His long history of victories had given him great confidence. Moreover, the trident in his hand was a quasi-emperor weapon. With his strength and this quasi-emperor weapon, even a great sage expert would have to retreat in front of him. He felt that Chu Kuangren would not be able to defeat him. In fact, it was not just Bei Mingsan who felt that way. Every scaled tribe member thought that Chu Kuangren would not be able to defeat Bei Mingsan. Our young master's strength is earth-shattering. With the trident weapon, even a sage would have to face him. How can Chu Kuangren compare? That's right. He's just waiting to lose. This person is considered a peerless sky pride on the land. He has reached the honorable realm at such a young age, and rumor has it that he's on par with a sage. It's a shame that he has encountered our young master. He's destined to lose. The scaled tribe members discussed among themselves. The sages on the island were curious as well. They were well aware of Chu Kuangren's combat strength, but Bei Mingsan's strength was not to be underestimated either. With a boundary emperor weapon, could his strength really be on par with Chu Kuangren's? Bring it on. Bei Mingsan waved his trident weapon, and a terrifying surge of water-based Daoist rhyme erupted, turning into a terrifying torrent that surged towards Chu Kuangren. That attack alone was no weaker than a sage's attack. Chu Kuangren did not use any weapons. He simply raised his hand and unleashed a palm attack. The incomparably violent human mountain stamp exploded in an instant, and a terrifying force crushed out like a divine mountain, shattering the torrent. Bei Mingsan's eyes lit up. Great! You're indeed the strongest sky pride on the land. It seems that I've met my match today. He looked a little excited as he gripped his trident tightly and charged towards Chu Kuangren. As the trident danced in the air, a monstrous torrent of energy erupted, and the sound of tsunami-like water continued to resound in the void. Chu Kuangren unsheathed the descendant self-sword at his waist. The moment he unsheathed it, an extremely cold surge of sword-based Daoist rhyme instantly tore Bei Mingsan's Daoist rhyme apart and forced him to retreat 100 meters. Then, a majestic sword chi erupted. With a slash, a majestic purple sword ray with a Daoist rhyme that seemed capable of tearing the heavens apart blasted towards Bei Mingsan. Black water billows. Bei Mingsang shouted and activated his ultimate technique. This was a saint ruler technique that was close to an emperor technique. With the support of the trident in his hand, its power was almost on par with an emperor technique. The trident shot out and the two forces collided with each other in the air. An incomparably majestic force surged out in an instant, crazily beating the void like a tidal wave, washing away everything. Under the impact of this force, Bei Mingsang was blasted back dozens of feet. The trident in his hand buzzed from the backlash, and he almost lost his grip on it. This person actually has such terrifying strength. Bei Mingsang couldn't believe it. Whenever he battled against sky prides, it was always him who crushed them. Yet now, he was at a disadvantage against Chu Kuangren. He had never encountered such a thing before. So this is your strength? How disappointing. Chu Kuangren said calmly. Comparable to a great sage? In Chu Kuangren's opinion, Bei Mingsan could at most exchange blows with a great sage, but it was impossible for him to defeat him. But he was different. He was someone who could even kill great saints. Again. Bei Mingsang roared angrily. He waved the trident in his hand, channeling his Daoist rhymes and spiritual power to the extreme, interweaving into a black ocean in the void. The ocean was turbulent, and waves rose one after another. A vast and boundless force shrouded Chu Kuangren. It was a dominating force. If an ordinary sage were to face such an attack, they would not even be able to block it for a second. Unfortunately, Chu Kuangren was fighting Bei Mingsang, and his combat strength was much stronger than an ordinary sage's. Lose. Bei Mingsang roared and swung the trident in his hand. A surge of energy instantly erupted. The boundless ocean surged towards Chu Kuangren. This attack is quite interesting. But it's not enough. Chu Kuangren smiled, and a blood-colored flame suddenly appeared on his body. He had activated the 9 Deaths blazing blood art. With the descendant self-sword in his hand, he suddenly swung his sword. Heaven-slaying sword drawing technique. The sword slashed out, and the sword light was incomparably magnificent. The boundless ocean was torn in half by the sword ray. The ocean was split in half by the sword ray. What? Bei Mingsang's pupils shrank, and his face was filled with shock. The sword ray was like a hot knife through butter as it swept towards him. Block it. Bei Mingsang roared and swung the trident in his hand. The sword ray collided with the trident, and an earth-shattering clanging sound erupted. The sound waves continued to spread. Unable to withstand the force, Bei Mingsang spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. The trident in his hand was also shaken. Chu Kuangren's figure turned into a stream of light and dashed towards the trident, grabbing it in his hand. Just as he succeeded, an extremely cold aura came from behind him, and a palm chi shrouded in frost blasted towards him. Humph! With a soft grunt, Chu Kuangren retaliated with a backhand palm. A golden Buddhist light erupted. Giant palm of exorcism. The golden palm collided with the frost palm chi, and the frost mixed with the golden Buddhist light shot out, sweeping the surroundings. Chu Kuangren was forced back a few feet, and he had a good look at the person who ambushed him. It was a white-haired old man. This old man's face was covered with a layer of scales, and he was obviously a sage of the scaled tribe. He was staring at Chu Kuangren coldly. "Kid, hand over the trident." Chu Kuangren held the trident, spun it around twice, and then put it into his yin and yang ring under the old man's furious gaze. "Since he lost the bet, this trident will naturally be mine. Don't you think the scaled tribe is so untrustworthy? The scaled tribe can use other things to trade with you, be it soulstones or treasures from the sea, but not this item. I'm sorry, but this is all I want." Chu Kuangren said calmly. "If that's the case, don't even think about leaving this island today," the scaled tribe sage said with a grim look. Behind him, the group of scaled tribe members were closing in on Chu Kuangren as well, surrounding him in layers and layers. Even a sage was a little intimidated by their terrifying aura. There were too many scaled tribe members, and they were in the middle of the ocean, which was the scaled tribe's territory. The situation was very disadvantageous for Chu Kuangren. If the scaled tribe is prepared to fight me to the death, then come at me." A Guqin appeared before Chu Kuangren. The sages could not help but shiver at the sight of that Guqin. They knew that if Chu Kuangren were to play the Guqin, the 8 celestial demonic chords would definitely kill off half of the scaled tribe members. Guqin music was originally suitable for wide-area attacks. Boom! At that moment, a terrifying wave of energy suddenly came from behind the scaled tribe, followed by a series of screams. "Ah, what is this thing? Quick, kill her!" Everyone looked over. A figure had suddenly appeared behind the scaled tribe. It was a headless body. It walked among the countless scaled tribe members as if it was in a deserted place. Wherever it went, the scaled tribe members would turn into dried corpses as if their life force had been sucked out of them. Everyone, including the sages, gasped when they saw that headless body. Chu Kuangren could not help but be shocked. "She's here." Chapter 332. She's here. Chu Kuangren could not help but be shocked when he saw the headless lady of the scaled tribe. His head had still attracted the headless lady here. Even though he had already sealed the head with a sealing talisman, the headless woman had still sensed the previous fluctuations. D***, what kind of monster is this? Why can't we kill her? How can she move without a head? What's going on? Our life essence is being sucked away by her. Quick, we need to kill this monster as soon as possible. The scaled tribe continued to attack the headless lady. However, no matter what they did, any energy that got close to the headless lady would be instantly disintegrated. They could not hurt her at all. It was the same for the scaled tribe sage. Oceanic overturning palm. One of the scaled tribe sages roared and leaped towards the headless lady. He then channeled all of his spiritual power and unleashed a palm attack. A violent surge of palm chi poured out with a force that could overturn rivers and seas. However, when that surge of energy approached the headless lady did not use any powerful cultivation techniques. All she did was gently lift her hand, and the sage's Daoist rhyme was instantly shattered. Then, the headless lady's figure flashed and disappeared from where she was. When she reappeared, she was holding the head of the scaled tribe sage who had attacked her. That scene shocked everyone. No one saw clearly how she killed the saint. All they saw was the headless lady taking the scaled tribe sage's head away, and a huge amount of blood gushed out from his neck. Then, the sage fell to the ground with a loud thud. The headless lady held the head in her hand and pressed it against her own neck as if she was trying to reattach it. However, since it was not her own head, she could not reattach it no matter how hard she tried. In the end, as if enraged, she smashed the sage's head onto the ground, smashing it into a pulp. Tsk, what a hot-tempered one. Chu Kuangren clicked his tongue not far away. It seemed that due to the sealing talisman, the headless lady could not sense that her head was with Chu Kuangren for the time being. She could only follow her instincts to this island. The best thing to do now was to escape as soon as possible. After all, he was no match for the headless woman. The headless woman. That's one of the 7 great ghost stories, the headless woman. I thought it was just some groundless rumor, but it turns out to be true. The headless woman really exists. A sage gulped and said. It was too terrifying. The headless woman killed sages as if they were dogs. It was as easy as blowing off dust. But why did the headless woman suddenly appear here? Who knows? Let's leave first. That's right. I don't want to die here. The group of sages fled in panic. The headless woman went on a killing spree among the Scaled tribe. Wherever she went, a strange aura filled the air, and all the Scaled tribe members were turned into dried corpses. Even a sage would not be able to withstand a single move from him. Swoosh, taking advantage of the chaos in the Scaled tribe, Chu Kuangren went up to Black Heaven's 2nd and 3rd forefathers and took out a talisman. 2nd Patriarch, 3rd Patriarch, grab me. Without suspecting anything, the 2 forefathers grabbed onto Chu Kuangren's shoulders. Chu Kuangren crushed the talisman, and in an instant, an invisible spatial energy enveloped the 3 of them. In the blink of an eye, the 3 of them disappeared on the spot. On the island, the headless woman was still on a killing spree. The sages were either dead or had fled. They could not face such a terrifying attack head-on. The tens of millions of Scaled tribe members were defeated and returned to the ocean. Soon enough. The headless woman was the only one left on the island. The headless woman continued to rummage through the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood. Occasionally, she would pick up a head and place it on her own head, but she could not connect it. She was so infuriated that she unleashed a terrifying energy wave that shook the entire unnamed island. With the headless woman at the center, it began to crumble. Not long after, the entire island crumbled and sank to the bottom of the ocean. The headless woman stood in the void, emanating a terrifying emperor's aura. The entire ocean surged violently because of her emperor's aura, causing countless sea creatures to tremble in fear. Some of the ordinary living beings did not sense anything, but those with higher cultivation levels could sense how terrifying the headless woman was. This was especially true for the sages, who almost fell to the ground and trembled in fear. In the depths of the ocean, 2 balls of yellow light suddenly appeared in the dark trench. Upon closer inspection, they were actually a pair of giant eyes. How can such an existence exist on Firmament Star? I'm afraid this woman was not an ordinary emperor when she was alive. Even in that place, she would be one of the best. A series of murmurs echoed in the ocean before everything returned to normal. On the unnamed island, after the headless woman had vented her anger, she reached out and grabbed at the void, tearing a pitch-black spatial rift. The woman walked into the rift and disappeared without a trace. What kind of existence is that? How can it be so terrifying? That's one of the 7 great strange stories in Firmament Star. I thought it was fake, but who knew that the headless woman really existed? The sages outside the island were still traumatized. It was at this moment that they realized that the high and mighty sages could one day be like ants in front of other existences. There were too many mysteries and unknowns in this world. Even the sages could not know everything. At that moment, Chu Kuangren had already left the unnamed island with the Black Heaven's 2nd and 3rd forefathers using the Great Shift Talisman and arrived at a mountain range hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. We should be safe now. Chu Kuangren looked around. Kid, you have quite a few tricks up your sleeve. The Black Heaven's 2nd and 3rd forefathers were amazed. Even a sage who was proficient in spatial Dao might not be able to teleport hundreds of thousands of kilometers in an instant. I obtained this talisman by chance, but it can only be used once. Chu Kuangren looked at the great shift talisman that had turned into ashes in his hand and shook his head. He did not feel that it was a waste. Ever since he got the lucky halo, he had obtained quite a number of good items in the past year or so, including some trump cards for escaping. The Great Shift Talisman was just one of them. Alright, let's return to the Black Heaven sect first, Chu Kuangren said. He took out the elusive mirage and returned to the Black Heaven sect. While he was back, the firmament star was not at peace. First, the appearance of the headless woman on the unnamed island had caused an uproar. All the sages were shocked when they heard the news. Second, the news that Chu Kuangren had obtained an emperor-grade treasure on the unnamed island had spread, and many people coveted the treasures that he had. Unfortunately, due to his powerful strength, no one dared to make a move on him. On the other hand, the scaled tribe that lived in the ocean was furious. The headless woman had killed several scaled tribe sages and more than half of the tens of millions of scaled tribe members. What made the scaled tribe king tremble with anger was the fact that the Sea King's trident, the symbol of the scaled tribe's supreme authority, had been taken away by an outsider. No, I must get the trident back. Black Heaven sect, I must make them pay for this. A cold light shot out from the scaled tribe king's eyes. Chapter 333. Chu Kuangren and the two forefathers soon returned to the Black Heaven sect. Once the two forefathers returned, they immediately went back to their cottage in the depths of the Black Heaven sect as if they did not care about the sect's affairs. They were more than happy to leave everything to Chu Kuangren. It's great that I'm retired. Why don't I just work for a few years and find an excuse to retire as well? Chu Kuangren thought to himself. On the surface, the Sage Orthodoxy's sect leaders usually retired after ascension, so it seemed like his own retirement was not far away. It was just ascension after all. It was not that difficult. As Chu Kuangren thought about it, he arrived at the Longevity Hall. Greetings, sect leader. Elder Ruyan bowed respectfully. Yo, Elder Ruyan seems to be in a good mood. Chu Kuangren saw the smile on Elder Ruyan's face. Elder Ruyan has been in a good mood for the past few days. Those who don't know better would think that she has found her Mr. Right. One of the elders beside her laughed. Chu Kuangren was quite surprised too. Was the 1,000-year-old virgin Ruyan about to have sex? Screw you, sect leader. These few days, the Daoist school of dedication and the Thunder Falcon tribe have sent over their soul stones. However, some of them have used some treasures as collateral. This is the bill. Elder Ruyan rolled her eyes before she took out a scroll and handed it to Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren took it and looked at it. It's not bad. I'll leave this matter to you. Just do as you see fit. Alright. I'll be in closed-door meditation for a few days to prepare to ascend to the Honorable Supreme Realm. Don't disturb me if there's nothing important. Huh? Sect leader, you're preparing to ascend to the Honorable Supreme Realm? Yes. Chu Kuangren nodded and sighed. The other Sage Orthodoxy's sect leaders are all Honorable Supremes, but I'm only an Honorable. If I don't break through to the Honorable Supreme Realm soon, I'll become a laughing stock. The elders could not help but sweat when they heard him say that. Sect leader, can we stop joking? You're an honorable, but you've killed many sages. Who in this world would dare to treat you as an ordinary honorable? Then wouldn't killing an honorable supreme be child's play for you? I can't take it anymore. I need to ascend to the Honorable Supreme Realm as soon as possible so I can retire after ascension, Chu Kuangren said. The elders were getting anxious. Don't. Sect leader, we're not in a hurry to transcend the tribulation. I think it's good that you continue to be the sect leader. That's right. It's only been a few years and he's already in such a hurry to retire. The shortest tenure of the other sect leaders was also a few hundred years. They were more than happy to see Chu Kuangren become the sect leader. He had only been the sect leader for slightly more than a year, but he had already raised the Black Heaven sect's foundation and strength by more than a level. Everything else aside, just the spirit stones won from this championship alone was enough to cover the Black Heaven sect's expenses for decades. In a few more years, the Black Heaven sect would definitely be able to take off. You old fellows, it seems like you can't wait for me to sit in the position of sect master until the end. Don't worry, I won't retire so easily until there's no suitable successor, Chu Kuangren said helplessly. It seemed that he still had a long way to go before he retired. At the very least, he would have to wait for Nangong Huang and the others to grow to the point where they could shoulder the responsibility. No matter what, it would take at least a few decades or a century. After discussing with Elder Ruyan and the others for a while, Chu Kuangren then returned to the towering Heaven Palace to go into closed-door meditation. Before he went into closed-door meditation, he first took out the few items that he had obtained from the unnamed island. Aside from the headless lady's head, there was also the white-haired man's corpse, a bronze mirror, and a wooden box. The bronze mirror was in a damaged state. It was originally an emperor weapon, but now, it could not even unleash the power of a boundary emperor weapon. This must be the emperor weapon mentioned in the diary, the green primordial mirror. It was destroyed by the headless lady. Chu Kuangren looked at the cracked bronze mirror in his hand and could not help but be shocked. This was an emperor weapon, after all. To be able to destroy an emperor weapon to such an extent, the headless lady's strength was just too terrifying. Moreover, her head had been chopped off, so she could not unleash her full strength. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the headless lady was when she was alive. An emperor was indeed earth-shattering. After keeping the green primordial mirror, Chu Kuangren did not immediately refine it. Instead, he looked at the wooden box. When he was on the unnamed island, he was afraid that the headless lady would come looking for him, so he was in a hurry to leave. He opened the wooden box. Inside, there was a scroll. A scroll. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up because the scroll in front of him was exactly the same as the one he found in the Sky Emperor Palace. He opened the scroll and saw that there was also an emperor technique inside. My luck is pretty good. I just found out about the existence of the 9 major scrolls from the Sky Emperor Palace, and now I've obtained one of them. I wonder what kind of emperor technique this is, Chu Kuangren thought. He did not immediately study it. Instead, he put it away. Let's wait until I become an honorable supreme first. Chu Kuangren thought. He took out some medicinal pills, which were prepared for his breakthrough. Besides that, he also had the sage-grade medicine he obtained from the unnamed island. Coupled with the few sage corpses in the Avarice dimension, he should be able to break through this time no matter how solid his foundation was. Even if it was not enough, he still had a boundary emperor's corpse. When he refined it, he would probably be able to ascend in one go. Time passed, and soon, 3 days had passed. On this day, a powerful aura erupted from the towering Heaven Palace that Chu Kuangren was in, and it quickly spread throughout the entire Black Heaven sect. The Black Heaven sect's sword mountain gently trembled and let out a sword cry. Deep within the Black Heaven sect, the Black Heaven sect's second forefather and the others sensed it. This little guy has broken through to become an honorable supreme. He'll probably ascend to become a sage soon. When that time comes, we can't keep calling him little guy. Not bad. The sages were relieved. Meanwhile, inside the towering Heaven Palace. After Chu Kuangren had successfully broken through to become an honorable supreme, he then looked at the white-robed man's corpse with a thoughtful look. Looks like I won't need this boundary emperor's body for now. I'll keep it and use it when I break through to become a sage. Chu Kuangren thought to himself. The blood and flesh essences that could be refined from a boundary emperor's body were definitely terrifying. It could help him to form a powerful sage's foundation, but it was still a long way from becoming a supreme sage's foundation. Therefore, before that, Chu Kuangren had to accumulate as many resources as he could so that he could form a supreme sage's foundation in one go. It's a pity that the gluttonous devouring technique is only a sage ruler technique, so it can't refine an emperor's body. Otherwise, if I refined that lady's head, I might really be able to form a supreme sage's foundation in one go. Chu Kuangren murmured. Then, he kept the white-haired man's corpse into his yin and yang ring. Then, he took out 2 halberds. One was black while the other was silver. They were the Heaven's halberd and the trident halberd that he obtained from the Scaled tribe's young master. When the 2 halberds stood side by side, the aura they emitted was somewhat similar, as if they were from the same origin. Could this boundary emperor weapon of the Lu kingdom be from the Scaled tribe? Chu Kuangren pondered. After that, he studied them for a while and did not find anything special about them, so he threw the 2 halberds back into his yin and yang ring. Finally, he began to study the emperor technique recorded on the scroll. Chapter 334. Compared to the heart-piercing finger scroll that Chu Kuangren studied in the Sky Emperor Palace, this scroll did not contain that strange evil energy. It seemed that this had something to do with the emperor technique recorded in the scroll. The heart-piercing finger was an emperor technique that targeted one's Daoist core. With its evil energy, it would affect both the user and the target. With the experience of studying the heart-piercing finger, Chu Kuangren's speed of studying the scroll was much faster this time. It only took him 6 hours. Comprehending an emperor technique in 6 hours? If word of this got out, it would be ridiculous. Even an emperor would not have such terrifying comprehension abilities. However, for Chu Kuangren, who possessed the meditational clarity of clarity and the transcendent coalescence Daoist physique, he managed to achieve the impossible. Raging God's Fist. This emperor technique was called the Raging God's Fist. This was a fist technique, an extremely terrifying fist technique. It focused on anger, and the more enraged the user was, the more terrifying the power of this emperor technique would be. After studying this emperor technique, Chu Kuangren felt a surge of anger in his heart. He wanted nothing more than to pick a fight with someone on the spot. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. With the rock-steady Daoist core, he quickly suppressed his anger. After studying the emperor technique, Chu Kuangren stretched his body. He then opened the fantasy roulette and began the day's gacha. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the Starlight Grade Water Aversion Pearl. Water Aversion Pearl? Chu Kuangren looked at the item's information. As the name suggested, it was a pearl that allowed its user to walk freely underwater and was even immune to water attacks to a certain extent. This is a pretty good treasure. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly. He was quite satisfied with this gacha. Treasures with special functions like this might come in handy in the future, just like the restriction talisman. After breaking through to the Honorable Supreme, Chu Kuangren stayed in the Black Heaven sect for the rest of his time. He did not go out to stir up trouble. If he was not discussing the sect's internal affairs with Elder Ruyan and the others, he would look for the Fairfrost sage to discuss the expansion of the spirit rice plantation. When he was free, he would gather Nangong Huang and the others to train them. Time passed by in an orderly manner. Chu Kuangren's foundation in the Supreme Honorable Realm was getting stronger and stronger, while Nangong Huang, Murong Xian, and the others' improvements were also getting more obvious. What surprised him was that Nangong Huang, Murong Xian, and the others did not complain during the training. They all gritted their teeth and persevered, as if they were holding back their anger. This made Chu Kuangren a little embarrassed to use his full strength. Aside from Nangong Huang, Murong Xian, and the others, Lan Yu had also volunteered to join the training camp. Moreover, she worked even harder than the others. Chu Kuangren could not help but feel sorry for her every time he saw her covered in wounds. Lil Bing, do you think Lan Yu, Nangong Huang and the others suffered some kind of shock? They suddenly became so hardworking? On top of the mountain peak, Chu Kuangren could not help but feel a little confused as he watched Lan Yu and the others fight with his sword Qi clone. Everyone wants to become stronger, Lil Bing said. Nonsense. Of course, you're training so hard to become stronger, but why are you suddenly so obsessed with becoming stronger? Chu Kuangren rolled his eyes and said. Sect leader, I'm afraid you'll have to ask them themselves. Lil Bing smiled faintly. She had been training with Lan Yu and the others for the past few days, so she could roughly guess what everyone was thinking. It was nothing more than the incident in the first city that had given them a lot of shock. They wanted to catch up to Chu Kuangren's footsteps and fight alongside him in the future. At least they would not always be behind Chu Kuangren, watching him take on everything alone and face all his enemies. Forget it, it's always a good thing to want to become stronger. I won't ask any more. Chu Kuangren thought about it and then ignored them. In fact, he was happy to see Nangong Huang and the others in their current state. He needed them to grow faster so that he could retire with peace of mind when they were able to take charge. Chu Kuangren felt a lot more relaxed when he thought about how he could quickly get rid of the heavy burden of the sect leader and not have to deal with a bunch of internal affairs. By the way, Master, tomorrow is the Inner Disciple Grand Tournament. Are you interested in watching? Lil Bing suddenly said. The Inner Disciple Grand Tournament. I just discussed it with Elder Ruyan and the others yesterday, so there's no harm in watching. Chu Kuangren smiled faintly. The Inner Disciple Grand Tournament was a common event in many orthodoxies. It was nothing more than gathering a group of inner disciples together and then competing against each other. The winner would win the prize and become a true disciple. The next day, there was a sea of people in front of the Black Heaven Sect's Longevity Hall. Countless disciples gathered together for the Inner Disciple Grand Tournament. As the Black Heaven Sect's foundation improved, the value of such a tournament also increased. The disciples selected were the best of the best, and the worst among the true disciples who could become true disciples were at least nascent soul realm. Moreover, becoming a true disciple was not without worries. Every once in a while, a true disciple would hold a competition, and the true disciple with the worst ranking would be demoted to an inner disciple. Only then could the Black Heaven Sect's disciples maintain a competitive relationship forever. They would be honed and improved through competition. As time passed, the Inner Disciple Grand Tournament went on for 3 days. In the end, the Inner Disciple Grand Tournament selected 4 winners. These 4 people would also receive rewards and be promoted to true disciples. As usual, Chu Kuangren, as the sect leader, had to go up on stage to award the 4 disciples their rewards and encourage them. When Chu Kuangren arrived at the Longevity Hall, a group of outer and inner disciples were already waiting for him. When they saw him, they were extremely excited. Look, it's the sect leader. Wow, the sect leader is getting more and more handsome. No matter how many times I look at his face, I won't get tired of it. Yeah, he's so handsome. I heard that the sect leader caused a ruckus in the first city for the sake of the Daoists. He even forced the first city and Sky Emperor Palace to publicly apologize. He's really amazing. Not only is the sect leader handsome, but he's also very strong. If only I could get close to him. I'm so envious of those 4 inner disciples. They can stand so close to the sect leader. Outside the Longevity Hall, the disciples were in a heated discussion. An elder stood up and looked at the disciples with a stern expression. He shouted, "Silence." Only then did the crowd gradually quiet down. Then, Chu Kuangren awarded the 4 disciples who won the Inner Disciple Grand Tournament. Inner Disciple Huaruyu, please come up on stage to receive your award. Chu Kuangren said calmly. A girl in a red dress walked up. Perhaps she was too excited, but when she approached Chu Kuangren, her face was flushed red. My God, the sect leader is only 1 step away from me now. He smells so good. Chu Kuangren did not know what Huaruyu was thinking. He handed the award to her and smiled. I hope you'll continue to work hard in the future. Yes, sect leader. I'll definitely work hard. Huaruyu said excitedly. Alright, good. Chu Kuangren used his eye of revelation to look at her. She was quite talented, and her growth potential was considered top-notch among the disciples. Then, he gave the other 3 disciples their awards. When he was giving the award to a disciple named Zhao Tianlong, he squinted his eyes and revealed a strange look. Could it be that Chu Kuangren had summoned him alone to give him a special reward? Come to think of it, Chu Kuangren had managed to advance from the Foundation Establishment realm to the mid-nascent Soul realm in just a year. No matter which orthodoxy he was in, he would be the top Sky Pride. It was reasonable for Chu Kuangren to value him. What was he going to reward him with? Pills, weapons, could it be some kind of saint technique? Zhao Tianlong felt a little excited just thinking about it. The newly promoted direct disciple, Zhao Tianlong, greets the sect master. You're welcome. May I know why the sect leader has suddenly summoned me? It's like this. Now that you've become a true disciple, you're now qualified to comprehend the 12 sage techniques of our Black Heaven sect. Have you decided which one you want to comprehend? Chu Kuangren chuckled. Sure enough, Chu Kuangren is secretly trying to promote me. He's even planning to open the back door for me and secretly give me pointers. Zhao Tianlong thought complacently. Please give me pointers, sect leader. Not pointers, but I'm a little curious. Do the Underworld Palace have more sage techniques or the Black Heaven sect? As soon as he said that, Zhao Tianlong's face turned extremely pale. His hands and feet turned cold and he could not help but tremble. His initial complacency vanished in an instant and was replaced by a great fear that shrouded him from head to toe. Sect. Sect leader, what are you talking about? He said with a trembling voice. What, you don't know? I thought that since you've done so much for the Underworld Palace, crippling your own cultivation and infiltrating my Black Heaven sect as a spy, the Underworld Palace would at least reward you with a sage technique. Don't tell me that the Underworld Palace is so stingy that they wouldn't even give you such a reward? Chu Kuangren sat in the longevity hall and said playfully. After hearing his words, Zhao Tianlong's body went limp and he immediately knelt on the ground. His body could not help but tremble. He wanted to say something, but his throat seemed to be stuck, so he could not utter a single word. What, you don't want to argue anymore? Sect leader, please spare my life. Zhao Tianlong begged for mercy, but it was as if he had used up all the energy in his body. His body was covered in a layer of cold sweat. Tell me, how many times have you sent news to the Underworld Palace in the past year? What kind of news? Chu Kuangren asked calmly. Zhao Tianlong was terrified. He did not expect Chu Kuangren to see through his identity the first time he met him. Not only that, Chu Kuangren even knew that he was from the Underworld Palace and that he had crippled his own cultivation. This was not as simple as him giving himself away. He even suspected that Chu Kuangren had planted spies in the Underworld Palace, and the higher-ups at that too. Otherwise, how could Chu Kuangren know so much about him? A total of 2 times. The first was when I first arrived at the Black Heaven sect to report to the Underworld Palace, and the second was to report on the Black Heaven sect's basic situation, including the Sword Gauntlet, the Gravity Training Grounds, and other cultivation grounds. Zhao Tianlong did not dare to hide anything and told Chu Kuangren everything. Beside him, Elder Rian listened with a gloomy expression. Zhao Tianlong did not divulge much information, so it did not affect the Black Heaven sect too much. However, this was only because he had only been in the Black Heaven sect for slightly more than a year. What if he was given more time? Not to mention that he had already become a true disciple and was qualified to come into contact with the true secrets of the Black Heaven sect. For example, sage techniques, spiritual rice farming, the marrow cleansing pool, and so on. If these were to spread, Elder Ruyan could not imagine how much of an impact it would have on the Black Heaven sect. Sect leader, it's my fault for letting a spy infiltrate the Black Heaven sect. Please punish me, sect leader. Elder Ruyan said guiltily. Well, you can't be blamed for this. The underworld palace is cunning and cunning. Since that person destroyed his own cultivation base, it's only natural that you couldn't detect it. Just pay more attention from now on, Chu Kuangren said. If not for his eye of revelation, he would not have noticed it either. Sect leader, what should we do about Zhao Tianlong? A cold glint flashed across Elder Ruyan's eyes. When Zhao Tianlong heard that, he quickly kowtowed and begged for mercy. Please spare my life, sect leader. I will definitely give my all for the Black Heaven sect in the future. I swear that I will never contact the underworld again. No, I want you to continue being a spy. Chu Kuangren suddenly uttered something shocking. Astonished expressions appeared on the faces of Elder Ruyan and Zhao Tianlong. I want you to continue being a spy. Of course, we'll decide what information you send back to the underworld palace. Chu Kuangren smiled. Elder Ruyan's eyes lit up when she heard that. She understood what Chu Kuangren meant. The underworld palace had planted a spy in the Black Heaven sect, but the Black Heaven sect had used that spy to send false information to the underworld palace to mislead them. What a great idea, sect leader. Elder Ruyan praised. Zhao Tianlong breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that. Was it not just a spy from the underworld palace becoming a spy for the Black Heaven sect? To him, it was nothing. As long as he could survive. Chapter 336. Then, Chu Kuangren took out some poison that he had refined in his spare time and fed it to Zhao Tianlong. With that, the spy was completely under his control. The fact that the underworld palace had planted spies in the Black Heaven sect had taught Elder Ruyan and the others a lesson. Hence, they conducted a thorough investigation of their disciples, and with the help of Chu Kuangren's eye of revelation, they managed to find a few of them. However, compared to Zhao Tianlong, these disciples were only outer and inner disciples, so they did not have much access to the sect's resources. Chu Kuangren did not let anyone deal with these people. Instead, he ordered Elder Ruyan to keep an eye on them, waiting for them to come in handy. Time passed. A few days had passed. On this day, Elder Ruyan went to find Chu Kuangren with a serious expression. Sect leader, the Black Heaven sect's affiliated sects along the coast were attacked yesterday. They suffered heavy casualties, Elder Ruyan said. Who did it? The Scaled Tribe. They said that if you don't hand over the Trident Halberd and the Emperor-grade treasures from the unnamed island, they will kill 100,000 people every day until all the affiliated sects of the Black Heaven sect are wiped out. Elder Ruyan gritted her teeth and said. Upon hearing that, Chu Kuangren took a deep breath, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Where are the Scaled Tribe now? The coastal region, the Snowstorm sect. Got it. I'll go there myself. Chu Kuangren said. He walked out of the Longevity Hall, and his figure turned into a stream of light and disappeared. The news of the Scaled Tribe provoking the Black Heaven sect spread like wildfire, and more than half of the orthodoxies in Firmament Star had received the news. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen. The Scaled Tribe was the overlord of the ocean. Although their resources could not be compared to the entire human race, they were still more powerful than any sage orthodoxy. After so many years in the ocean, countless sages had been born. Chu Kuangren was not a sage, but he was more powerful than one. In just a few years, he had risen with an unstoppable momentum, becoming the most dazzling legend in Firmament Star for hundreds of thousands of years. The battle between the two must be extraordinary. Azure Dragon Domain, the coastal region of the Snowstorm sect. The corpses of more than 100,000 Snowstorm sect disciples and civilians were piled on the coast, emitting a strong stench of blood. Beside the countless corpses, there were several huge, upright sea beasts that were constantly devouring these corpses. Not far away, the upper echelon elders and sect leader of the Snow Wind sect were all shackled and locked in cages. They watched this scene with bloodshot eyes. Look, this is the consequence of going against the Scaled tribe. At the side of the cage, a Scaled tribe general in azure armor smiled coldly and said, "Don't worry, it won't just be the Snowstorm sect. As long as Chu Kuangren doesn't hand over the item, we'll continue to kill until we've wiped out all of the Black Heaven sect's affiliated forces. I'd like to see how long Chu Kuangren can endure this. Sect leader will never let you off." The Snow Wind sect leader said with his eyes wide open. "Huh, that would be great. I'd like to see what kind of storm Chu Kuangren can stir up. Our Scaled tribe is a big clan, and we live deep in the ocean. No matter how strong Chu Kuangren is, do you think he can dive into the ocean to settle the score with us? The seabed is the Scaled tribe's territory." The Scaled tribe general laughed out loud. Compared to the other sage orthodoxies of the four domains, the Scaled tribe was not afraid of Chu Kuangren at all. To them, so what if Chu Kuangren was powerful? He was still a land creature after all, and the Scaled tribe lived deep in the ocean. In the ocean, no one could do anything to the Scaled tribe. A night passed. The Scaled tribe general looked at the rising sun and sneered. "It's the second day, and Chu Kuangren still hasn't shown up. Go to the Snow Wind sect's territory and capture another 100,000 people to feed to the oceanic beasts." "Yes." A group of Scaled tribe soldiers rushed towards the city not far away. The Snow Wind sect leader and the others who witnessed this scene yelled, "Stop! Come at us if you have the guts." The Scaled tribe general said, "That won't do. You're the Snow Wind sect leader and elders. I want you to watch how we kill the people and disciples that you've been protecting. Just like Chu Kuangren. If he doesn't hand over the item, the Scaled tribe will watch how his affiliated forces are slaughtered. Be ****. The Snow Wind sect leader roared, but there was nothing he could do. A large group of Scaled tribe soldiers rushed towards the city. Most of these Scaled tribe soldiers were covered in scales of different colors, and some even had horns and other organs. They looked extremely ferocious. The people in the city could not help but fall into despair as they looked at the overwhelming number of Scaled tribe soldiers. Some of the cultivators gritted their teeth and stepped up to the city walls in an attempt to protect the people in the city. However, their strength was too insignificant in the face of the tens of thousands of Scaled tribe soldiers. Wah! An infant in the arms of a woman seemed to have sensed something and started to cry. The woman could not help but hug the infant tighter. Someone, please save us." The Scaled tribe soldiers had arrived at the city walls and were about to enter the city. The cultivators on the city walls were also prepared to fight to the death. At that moment, a purple sword ray suddenly appeared from afar. The sword ray was as vast as a torrent, covering the entire sky. The sword ray swept across the sky above countless people and rushed into the Scaled tribe army. Under the attack of this sword ray, the Scaled tribe soldiers, be it Nascent Soul or Paradise Realm cultivators, or even the Battle Monarch Realm cultivators, could not resist it at all. They were instantly turned into blood mist and exploded. In just an instant, tens of thousands of Scaled tribe soldiers had vanished into thin air, never to be seen again. Far away, amidst the surging sea of clouds, a deafening roar was heard. A large patch of red light floated and dyed the sky red. A blood-red godly phoenix soared into the sky, emitting waves of auspicious chi. On top of the godly phoenix, there was an otherworldly figure dressed in a wide-sleeved white robe with a magnificent longsword strapped to his waist. The godly phoenix in the sea of clouds looked like a deity. It's the sect leader. It's the Black Heaven sect leader, Chu Kuangren. He's here. We're saved. Someone recognized Chu Kuangren and could not help but cheer. The woman hugged the infant and cried tears of joy. The cultivators breathed a sigh of relief. Not far away, a few sea beasts on the shore sensed the godly phoenix's aura and let out a low growl of agitation. The scaled tribe great general's eyes narrowed as he said solemnly, "So he's Chu Kuangren? His aura is extraordinary indeed." Chu Kuangren flew to the sky above the city. With Daoist rhymes emanating from his body, he cast the spring breeze healing technique and a gust of wind swept across the entire city. Some of the cultivators and citizens who were injured in the scaled tribe's invasion had recovered. They looked at Chu Kuangren with fervent gazes as if they were devout believers who had met their god. Once that was done, Chu Kuangren rode the godly phoenix to the scaled tribe great general and said, "Let them go and accept your death. You're indeed the strongest sky pride of the continent. You're indeed extraordinary. We can let them go if you hand over the item, and the scaled tribe will never invade again." The scaled tribe great general laughed. "You have no right to negotiate with me." Is that so?" The scaled tribe great general sneered and waved his hand. Then, a few scaled tribe soldiers beside him walked towards the snowstorm sect leader and the others. "If you don't agree, I'll kill them right now." "Try me?" Chu Kuangren said calmly. An invisible force field spread out with him as the center. It was his battle monarch domain. Under the domain, the scaled tribe soldiers who were near the snowstorm sect leader and the elders were all pressed to the ground, unable to move. "What?" The scaled tribe great general's expression changed. In a flash, he charged towards the snowstorm sect leader and the others despite the pressure from the battle monarch domain. He wanted to capture them as hostages to force Chu Kuangren into submission. However, a ray of light suddenly flashed past him and arrived in front of him. Then, a pale palm enlarged in front of him and strangled him with an unstoppable force. "I told you, you have no right to negotiate. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.